It begins, as most terrible things in history do, with a war you didn't start. Maybe you were a farmer in Gaul, a merchant in Carthage, or just some poor soul living your best provincial life. But then the Roman legions arrived. Your peaceful existence? Over. You were captured, shackled, and marched hundreds of miles. Now congratulations, you're officially someone's property. The year is around 100 BCE. The Roman Empire is expanding aggressively, like an overachiever on too much wine. Its armies sweep across continents, its laws shape the known world, and senators argue dramatically while reclining on couches and poking slaves with their sandals to bring more grapes. It's a golden age for them. For you, you just lost your name, your freedom, and possibly your left shoe. But don't worry, you'll be renamed soon enough. Maybe Felix, which means lucky. Romans had a great sense of irony when it came to slave names. Let's start your first day. You're shoved into a bustling slave market in the Roman Forum, chaotic, noisy, humiliating spectacle. Buyers poke and prod you like you're a goat at an auction. They check your teeth. They examine your muscles. One old man even lifts your tunic to check your thighs. You haven't felt this violated since you were dragged out of your village. Eventually, a wealthy Roman named Gaius purchases you. He's got a villa in the countryside, a loud wife, 2 spoiled children, and a suspicious number of statues of himself. You're loaded onto a cart and taken away, still wondering how trading wine on the coast turned into lifelong servitude. Spoiler, piracy and Roman conquest don't come with insurance plans. Gaius isn't a monster, he's just Roman. Which is to say, he sees you as a very expensive talking broom. You're assigned to domestic service, small mercy. You won't be breaking rocks in a quarry or inhaling lead fumes in a mine, yet. Instead, you'll be scrubbing mosaics, hauling bathwater, and learning how to fold togas like your life depends on it. Because, well, it kind of does. You sleep in the kitchen, not near Itinet, on a straw mat, with the cat. You curl up next to a pile of amphorae and try not to breathe too loudly. You eat what's left over after the family finishes dinner, a hunk of stale bread, a spoonful of lentils, maybe some half-chewed fig if the toddler spat it out. The next morning, you're up before sunrise. Gaius likes his bath lukewarm, his sandals warm, and his slaves invisible unless summoned. You run errands across the city, clean up after the family's pet monkey, and try to stay awake during the children's daily screaming contest. The mistress throws a jug at your head before breakfast. It's ceramic. You develop excellent reflexes. You're not allowed to speak unless spoken to. You can't look Gaius in the eye. If you drop a dish, you get beaten. If you speak out of turn, you get beaten. If you breathe, wrong beaten. You start to understand why some slaves pray to Mercury, the god of trickery and travel. You mostly pray for travel, far, far away. But something else begins to happen. You learn. You learn the hierarchy of the household. Who has Gaius's ear, who hates the mistress, which slaves are lovers, which are traitors. You learn to walk silently across marble floors. You learn the exact moment to laugh at Gaius's terrible jokes. You learn where the wine is hidden and who drinks it after hours. You learn when to speak and when to become invisible. You start to adapt. You're no longer the terrified foreigner. You're a quiet observer, a survivor. You're carving out a tiny sliver of dignity in a world that's designed to crush you. And maybe, just maybe, you're beginning to figure out how to endure. Because while you may not own your name, your time, or even your body, you still own one powerful thing, your mind. And the Romans haven't figured out how to chain that yet. There's something oddly peaceful about Roman mornings, at least for those who own the house. For you, not so much. You're jolted awake by the sound of footsteps. Another slave, named Tiro, kicks your side gently with his sandal. Up, mistress wants her bread warm this time. Right. It's your second week as a domestic slave in Gaius's villa, and you've already discovered that sleep is a luxury, not a guarantee. You rise quickly, ignoring the ache in your legs and the cold seeping through the stone floor. The kitchen fire has long since died out, so the first order of business is getting it going again before the rest of the house starts barking orders. You're still adjusting to the rhythm of Roman life. Unlike your old existence where waking up meant deciding what to eat or what field to work, this new rhythm is dictated entirely by other people's whims. It's not just physically draining, it's mentally corrosive. You're not a person anymore. You're an instrumentum vocalia talking tool. Morning chores and the art of invisibility. The villa's corridors echo under your feet as you dash from room to room. You try to move quietly but efficiently make too much noise and you'll be scolded for disturbing the family. Move too slowly and you'll be accused of laziness. It's a tightrope act performed every day in silence with stakes that include beatings or worse. You deliver fresh water to Gaius, careful not to spill a drop. Then you run to the bakery stall in town because despite having a kitchen, the lady of the house insists the bread tastes like it came from the forum. On the way back, you stop to wipe down the statue of Jupiter in the atrium. He's watching you, stone eyes fixed forever in judgment. You wonder if he finds this all amusing. By mid-morning, you've fetched, scrubbed, chopped, folded, dusted, and bowed enough times to forget what your spine feels like when it's upright. You learn to time your presence to your master's movements, always available, but never in the way. It's an acquired skill, how to be invisible but essential. Learning the household hierarchy. If you thought being a slave made everyone equal, you're dead wrong. There's a strict caste system even here. At the top are the dispensatores, slaves who manage money and oversee logistics. They handle accounts, supervise other slaves, and answer directly to Gaius. They're often literate and sometimes even respected until they make a mistake. Next are the cubicularii, or bedroom slaves. These are trusted servants, but their proximity to the master or mistress often means they're at the mercy of their moods. You don't envy Theme and Wrong Whisper, and they're out in the field digging ditches. Then come the cooks, cleaners, water fetchers, and cloth folders. That's where you sit, somewhere between replaceable and invisible. At the bottom are the latrine boys you don't even want to talk about what they go through. But even among equals, there's a pecking order. The older slaves bully the younger ones. The ones who speak Latin fluently look down on those who don't. And everyone secretly hates the Greek slave named Linus, who corrects everyone's grammar during dinner service. The first punishment you witness. One day, a boy no older than 13, probably born into slavery, drops a bronze platter during lunch. It clatters on the marble floor, echoing through the room like a death knell. Everything stops. The guests laugh awkwardly. Gaius doesn't. Take him to the column, he says. And just like that, the boy is dragged into the courtyard. You follow at a distance, heart pounding. He's tied to a post, shirt removed, back bared. The whip comes out a short-handled scourge with multiple tails. The strikes fall quickly, methodically. 5, 10, 15. You lose count. When it's over, the boy is untied and left to lie in the dirt. No one offers him help. Later, you learn he wasn't punished for the plate, was punished to remind the rest of you what could happen. This wasn't about justice. This was about control. Slaves in the Roman economy. That night, as you clean the oil lamps and prepare Gaius's evening sandals, you think about how many of you there are. Slaves are everywhere up to 1/3 of Rome's population. You've heard the whispers that Rome would collapse without its slaves. You sweep the villa's mosaic floor and think, they're probably right. You are the reason Gaius can spend the afternoon arguing about philosophy. You are the reason his wife can host dinner parties and pretend she's cultured. You clean, cook, translate, write letters, mend togas, and sometimes raise their children. All of this, and yet you're not even considered a full person. Still, the economy thrives. The fields outside the city are plowed by chained workers. The ships that carry Roman grain and wine run on slave labor. The temples are cleaned by slaves. The amphitheaters are staffed by them. Even the army relies on them for supply chains. It's a system that runs so well, so efficiently, that even the philosophers forget to question it most of the time. Nightfall and the illusion of rest. After the lamps are extinguished and the villa grows quiet, you retreat to your corner of the kitchen. You share it with 3 others, including Tiro, who snores like a drowning cow. The smell of roasting meat still lingers in the air, a cruel reminder of what you didn't eat. Tonight, there's no bread left, just some old boiled lentils and a half-chewed fig someone dropped earlier. You eat in silence, using a splintered wooden spoon. Before you lie down, you hear hushed whispers near the entrance. It's 2 other slaves plotting an escape. You want to tell them it's suicide. You've seen the iron collars worn by those who tried and failed. But you also understand. Every day, this place chips away at your soul. Some days, it feels like death would be kinder. As you close your eyes, you think of your old life, your family, your freedom. It feels like a different world, a story you read once, a dream you only half remember. Tomorrow, you'll rise Aga. In before the sun, you'll fetch sandals, clean vomit from a mosaic, and smile when Gaius tells his friends how obedient you are. And you'll wait, because in Rome, even a slave is allowed to dream. Your 3rd week begins with thunder. Not from the sky Rome's weather is dry and lazy this time of year, but from the bellowing of Gaius's neighbor, Lucius, whose prized peacock has gone missing again. The bird is presumably eaten, drunk, or borrowed by another noble's spoiled son. The whole neighborhood is now in uproar over a glorified chicken with good PR. You don't care about the peacock. You care that Lucius's rage will set Gaius on edge, and when Gaius is on edge, someone possibly you will end up on the receiving end of a sandal or worse. So you move faster, quieter. You polish the atrium tiles until your fingers ache, arrange the citrus fruit in a perfect geometric pattern, and place a scroll just so next to his breakfast tray, as if the gods themselves had delivered it with divine intent. Gaius enters, yawns, and promptly knocks the scroll to the floor. You retrieve it without speaking. You are a shadow, a whisper, a breath that hopes not to be noticed. You are very good at this now. Still, the day is not yours to shape. The household is preparing for a visit from a Roman magistrate, which is like preparing for a tornado that might leave a compliment or might tear your house apart depending on whether the figs are ripe. Gaius is stressed, his wife is shrieking about wine, and the cook is threatening to dump boiling garum on anyone who enters the kitchen. You spend the morning polishing silver you didn't even know existed. By noon, the magistrate arrives. His entrance is grand, slow, and accompanied by 4 slaves of his own, all younger and better dressed than you. They carry scrolls, fans, and one of them somehow has perfectly styled hair despite the humidity. Show off. You don't get to sit in on the meeting, but you hover near the periphery. You learn a lot by listening: who's in debt, who's cheating on whom, which senators are scheming, which slaves might be sold soon. Information is power, even if you can't use it. Yet, the magistrate leaves with a nod. Gaius seems relieved. He didn't embarrass himself, his wine was praised, and no one mentioned the peacock. That night, you share the news with Tiro, who sits sharpening a stolen nail into a pick. He's not planning an escape, he's planning a comb. Vanity survives even when dignity doesn't. You ask Tiro how long he's been here. He shrugs. 3 years, or 5, doesn't matter. I stopped counting after the second whipping. You believe him. Time doesn't move normally here. It stretches and folds and forgets itself. A day can feel like a week. A month can vanish in routine. Then something happens that changes everything. You're reassigned. It happens without fanfare, a nod from Gaius, a brief word from the steward. You're no longer a household slave. You're now headed to the fields. This is not a promotion. You're packed into a cart at dawn with 6 others and driven for hours. The countryside unrolls like a painted scroll: vineyards, olive groves, dusty hills dotted with poppies. It would be beautiful if you weren't moving toward what everyone calls the grind. The latifundium is massive. Acres of farmland, dozens of workers, and a villa for the overseer who looks like he eats punishment for breakfast. His name is Rufus, and he's a former centurion, which means he once yelled at terrified boys with spears, and now yells at terrified slaves with plows. Your new uniform is simpler: a tunic, a straw hat, and shackles. Not metaphorical one-actual iron anklets linked with a chain short enough to prevent running but long enough to allow stumbling. Your job is olive gathering. You are now one with the olive. You pick them, carry them, crush them, press them, and do it again. Your hands are soon stained black, your fingers swell, your shoulders burn. But the worst part isn't the labor, it's the silence. In the villa, there was conversation, whispers, even laughter if no one important was listening. Here, it's different. The field slaves don't talk unless necessary. Their eyes are flat, their movements mechanical. You realize it's a form of survival. Words are dangerous here. They remind you that you're human. They invite punishment. You learn quickly. You stop humming. You stop asking questions. You become efficient. At night, you sleep in a wooden shed with 30 others. There are no mats, just dirt. Rats scurry between feet. The smell is complex. Food is worse here. A ladle of barley, gruel, and water that tastes like it resents you. You eat fast. You sleep faster. You dream of figs, not freedom, just figs. The days blur. 1 becomes 10. You forget how long you've been here. You forget your fake Roman name. You become hands, muscles, motion. But then, a crack, a whisper. A young slave named Publius, barely 16, shares his bread. With you, he's missing 2 fingers from a press accident, but smiles like he owns Rome. He tells you stories of his village, of a sister he hopes is still alive, of how he once saw an eagle land on a temple roof and thought it was Jupiter himself. You laugh. Quietly. Publius talks too much. That's how you know he won't last long. He breaks a press crank the next week. Rufus beats him with a wooden rod until he vomits blood. No one helps. No one dares. You carry him back to the shed. He doesn't wake up the next morning. Rufus orders you to bury him near the olive trees. You do. You don't cry. You don't know if you can. But something shifts. You start to notice things. A hidden crack in the wall of the shed. A guard who drinks too much and sleeps through half his shift. A broken link in your ankle chain that could, with enough force, snap completely. You don't have a plan, but you have something close to it. Hope. It's dangerous. It keeps you alive. Back in the villa, people whispered about manumission freedom granted to slaves who served well or who bought it after years of saving. Out here, no one talks about it. Out here, freedom is a myth. But myths have power. One night, a thunderstorm hits, real thunder this time. Rain lashes the fields, lightning strikes a tree near the press house and sets it ablaze. Chaos erupts. You run. You don't think. You just run. The chain catches your leg. You fall. Your head hits something hard. Darkness. When you wake, it's morning. You're back in the shed. Your head is bandaged. The other slaves look at you differently. No one says anything. But someone must have dragged you back. Someone must have saved you. You don't know who. It doesn't matter. They saw you run. They saw you try. You don't get punished. Maybe Rufus doesn't care. Maybe he thinks the fall was punishment enough. But something's changed. They start talking again. Not loudly, not often, but enough. You are not alone. And for the first time in weeks, you remember your real name. And you whisper it to yourself like a secret. You wake up sore, as usual. But today, something's different. Not the smell that still oscillates between boiled barley and wet goat. Not the bedure still sleeping on dirt, possibly shared with 3 rats and a scorpion named Claudius. You've given up trying to evict him. No, the difference today is in your chest. Not physically, your ribs are still bruised, but emotionally, there's something flickering there. You think it might be resilience or insanity. At this point, who can tell? Rufus is late today. That's strange. Rufus is never late. He's the type of man who screams at the sun for being 2 minutes slow. The slaves in the shed stir nervously. You've learned that when routines break in Rome, it rarely means anything good. Eventually, the doors are flung open, but it's not Rufus. It's a younger man. His tunic is clean, his face is smug, and he's carrying a scroll like it's an extension of his ego. "I am Decimus," he announces, clearly expecting gasps or applause. Silence. He clears his throat. "I am your new overseer." Still silence. One slave sneezes. You suspect it was sarcastic. Decimus frowns. "Rufus has been promoted. I shall now be ensuring maximum productivity." Which is Roman for, "I will make your lives even more miserable than the last guy." And just like that, your chapter with Rufus ends, and a new kind of misery begins. Decimus is different, not better, just differently terrible. Where Rufus was blunt force trauma, Decimus is slow suffocation. He doesn't scream, he smiles. He documents every infraction on wax tablets, then doles out collective punishments. One slave talks back. Everyone loses dinner. Someone spills olive oil. Everyone loses sleep. He calls it discipline. You call it psychological warfare. Still, there's one advantage. Decimus is lazy. He doesn't inspect the field often. He relies on a network of informant slaves turned snitches in exchange for extra scraps of bread or the rare luxury of foot ointment. You quickly learn who they are. You say nothing around them. You smile. You nod. You keep your secrets. Secrets are your new currency, and you're about to acquire a few more. It starts when you're assigned to a new task transporting oil amphorae into the storage cellar. You're grateful for the change. Picking olives all day has left your hands raw and your spirit flatter than stale focaccia. The cellar is dark, damp, and full of echoes. You're not alone. There are 2 other slaves with you, both older, both quiet. You nod in greeting. One of them nods back. The other just grunts. Social niceties aren't exactly a priority here. While lifting a jug, you spot etched faintly into the stone behind a broken barrel. A mark, not Roman letters, Greek. You don't speak Greek, but you recognize resistance when you see it. You brush off the moss and uncover a phrase. E lambda pi zeta omega. Hope. You stare at it for a while. Here. T. Thumping. Someone was here before. Someone who dared to believe something better was possible. You want to believe it too. You don't tell the others. Not yet. Not until you know who you can trust. Later that night, after the usual gruel and a dramatic monologue from a drunk field hand about how he once wrestled a boar with his bare hands, no one believes him. You sit beside an older woman named Livia. She's got a bad leg, a sharper tongue, and the uncanny ability to know things before they happen. "Tell me about Decimus," you say quietly. She snorts. Ambitious little rodent. Wants to be a senator. Thinks if he runs this place like a spreadsheet, someone in Rome will pat him on the head. "Do you think he's dangerous?" She looks at you, eyes sharp. They're all dangerous, but this one's the kind that lets you bleed slowly. You nod, then take a chance. "Have you ever heard of hope?" She blinks. "Not in Latin. Greek, written on a wall." Now she leans closer. "Where?" "In the cellar." She's silent for a long moment, then, "You're not the first to find that." You wait. There was a boy, years ago, thought he could escape, carved that in before he tried. "What happened?" She sighs. "We never saw him again." Dead? Free? No one knows, but the mark remains. Later, back in your shed, you stare at the ceiling and wonder, why did he write it? Was it a goodbye? A warning? A prayer? You fall asleep dreaming of tunnels beneath the cellar, secret exits, forgotten passageways, the kind of fantasies that only grow in places designed to break you. The next day, the rain comes. Rain in the Roman countryside isn't gentle, it's angry. It slaps the fields with wild fury and turns every pathway into a mud trap. Work continues, of course. Rome doesn't care about weather. If the gods wanted you to stop working, they would have sent lightning. Rain is just a challenge. You're tasked with clearing debris near the press house. You slip twice, once into a puddle, once into a pig. The pig is deeply unimpressed. But something strange happens. Decimus is watching. He's standing under a canopy, dry and smug, but instead of the usual scowl, he's smiling, watching you specifically. That night, you're called into the overseer's villa. Your stomach sinks. This is never good. But when you enter, he doesn't scream. He doesn't even raise his voice. He offers you food. Real food. Meat. Cheese. Wine. You hesitate. It's not poisoned, he chuckles. You've been doing good work. I reward that. You sit, slowly, carefully. You're smart, he continues. Smarter than most of the others. And I have a proposition. Here it comes. I need someone to keep order, quietly. Someone who knows when people are whispering too much. Someone who can report. There it is, the offer. Become his informant, his eyes, his ears. You stare at the food. You're starving, but you're also human. No, you say. Just one word, quiet, firm. His smile vanishes. You'll regret that. Already do. You're sent back to the shed without food. You lie in the dark, stomach growling, heart racing. But you said no. You're still you. In the following days, Decimus makes life harder. Your shifts are longer. Your food is worse. You're moved back to olive picking and away from the cellar. But you don't care. Because you've seen the mark. Because someone else said no before you. Because now you say it too. And then something happens. You're returning from the grove when a young girl, no more than 10, slips and falls. She's bleeding, crying. Decimus walks past her without a glance. You stop. You lift her gently. Carry her to the water trough. Wash the wound. Rip part of your tunic for a bandage. Other slaves watch. Someone whispers, "He helped her." The next morning, there's bread beside your sleeping mat. You don't know who left it. The resistance has no banners, no slogans, no leaders. But it's real, and it starts small. A shared meal. A warning whispered just in time. A hand offered in silence. You're not free, not yet, but you're not broken either. And every time you remember that word on the cellar wall, you whisper it again. A lambda pi zeta omega. Hope. Because as long as you believe in it, Rome hasn't won. And you still have a story to tell. It starts with a rumor. Whispers in the olive grove. A glance exchanged too quickly. Bread passed between calloused hands that shouldn't be touching. You can feel it in the air. Change. Or maybe you're imagining it. That's the thing about being a slave in Rome. You begin to question everything. Every look could mean betrayal or solidarity. Every silence might be safety, or the moment before punishment. Paranoia becomes your shadow. But lately, there's a new feeling hiding underneath it. Something soft, unfamiliar. You think it might be trust. It's been a week since Decimus made his offer. You turned him down, and he didn't forget. Your rations were cut in half. Your Aussie. 9 months became cruelly specific latrine pits, wet laundry, hauling amphorae up endless stone stairs. But you didn't bend. And the others noticed. One morning, Tuliushu hasn't spoken to anyone in months, hands you a fig. Just places it in your palm and walks away. Another day, you find your sandals have been mended. You don't know who did it. You don't ask. The smallest kindness becomes rebellion. You're back in the olive fields today, harvesting under the gaze of Decimus's new favorite, a lanky slave named Cassian, who decided the best way to survive was to align himself with power. He watches from the shade, arms crossed, like a cat playing God. Every time someone slows down, he clears his throat, loudly. You want to throw an olive at his face. You don't. Yet, around midday, you're summoned back to the villa, not the overseer's, Gaius's. Apparently, he's decided to inspect his estate personally. It happens maybe twice a yearless if the Senate's having a particularly dramatic season, or if his wife discovers a new obsession like sea sponges or Greek poets. You clean up as best you can, which, in this context, means wiping olive paste from your arms and brushing leaves out of your hair. You're still filthy, but perhaps a bit more presentable. The trip back to the villa takes a day. You're packed into a cart with several others. The landscape blurs past, hills, trees, farms, a distant aqueduct snaking like stone lightning across the sky. You don't speak. No one does. Not until you arrive. The villa is exactly as you remember it. Grand, symmetrical, arrogant. Columns that serve no function. Statues of gods no one believes in anymore. And that smell the mix of perfume and roasted meat that makes your stomach twist. You're dropped at the rear entrance, assigned immediately to the bathhouse. Of course. What better use for an olive-stained field slave than scrubbing the floor where Gaius's bloated cousin will soon sweat wine and fish sauce? Still, you don't complain. The bathhouse is quiet, cool, and most importantly, away from Decimus. You scrub tile. You light coals. You wait. Eventually, the procession arrives. Gaius enters first, robed and loud, announcing his return like the prodigal emperor of some forgotten province. His wife follows, fanning herself with exaggerated boredom. The children trail behind, arguing over whose pet turtle is smarter. And then, a visitor. You weren't expecting her. She's young, maybe 20, Roman by dress but not by blood. Her skin is darker, her posture defiant. She walks like someone who's been told to bow and refused. You hear her name Marcia spoken with forced politeness by Gaius. She's the daughter of a senator, someone whispers. She's studying rhetoric. She's dangerous. She locks eyes with you as she passes. Not in the way Romans usually do, like you're a vase or a dog. She looks at you, really looks. You flinch. Later that evening, she returns to the bathhouse alone. You're still cleaning. She says nothing at first, just watches. Then, you speak Latin? You freeze. No one's asked that in months. Yes, you say. She nods. Good. Do you also think Gaius is a pompous idiot, or is that a risky opinion around here? You almost laugh. Almost. I think he's Roman, you reply. She smiles. Diplomatic. You'll do well. Then she does something no Roman has ever done in your presence. She sits on the stone bench across from you. I'm writing a speech, she says, on justice. You blink. In Rome? She shrugs. Yes, why? You gesture to yourself. This isn't justice. She nods. That's why I want to write about it. You sit in silence. The coals crackle. The air smells like mint and wet stone. Then she says something truly absurd. I want to know what your life is like. You laugh. You can't help it. She doesn't flinch. I'm serious. You look at her. No, you don't. And then you tell her. Not everything, but enough. The beatings, the hunger, the cellar with the word carved into stone. A lambda pi zeta omega. She listens, really listens. And when you finish, she stands and says something you'll remember for the rest of your life. You're not invisible. I see you. And then she leaves. You don't sleep that night. You lie awake in the corner of the kitchen, staring at the rafters, wondering if this is what madness feels like, to be seen. The next day, Gaius leaves again, back to the city, back to Senate debates and gladiator matches and toga fittings. You don't care. You've already forgotten his voice. But you remember hers. Weeks pass. Back in the fields, life returns to normal. Decimus is still smug. Cassian is still unbearable. But something's changed in you. When you close your eyes, you don't see chains. You see fire. A slow, patient fire. One day, a parchment appears in your storage shed. No name, just a line. Some stories are worth telling, even if no one believes them. You hide it, memorize it, burn it. Tea. Hat night. Livia asks what's wrong. You tell her about Marcia. She nods. Senators' daughters. Dangerous indeed. But she smiles. Another week. Another punishment. A boy drops a crate of olives. It splits. Oil everywhere. Cassian demands a flogging. Decimus agrees. The boy is tied. The whip is raised. And you step forward. Just one step. Wait. Everyone freezes. You meet Decimus's eyes. He slipped. The crate was rotting. I saw it. Decimus sneers. And what do I care? You raise your chin, because next time it might be your amphora, your prophet. Silence. Then, to your shock, Decimus sighs. Fine. Clean it. All of you. Now. He walks away. And something happens. The boy looks at you like you're a god. You're not. You're just tired of watching. Later, in the shed, bread is passed around again. You're not sure who started it. Doesn't matter. Hope tastes like bread shared by dirty hands. And Marcia? She never returns. But you dream of her sometimes. Of her voice. You're not invisible. I see you, and you believe her. Because now, so do you. It's the smell that wakes you first. Burnt barley, spoiled wine, a hint of something sharper like copper or blood. Your nose twitches before your eyes open. It's not a dream. It's the latifundium. Again. You stretch beneath the thatched roof of the slave barracks, bones cracking like old pottery. The air is thick, stale. Another day begins not with sunlight, but with sound, the metallic clank of shackles, the soft curses of tired men, the call of the overseer. You are not special. You are not chosen. You are not remembered. You are awake. That's enough. The night before had ended with whispers. Quiet ones. Fragments of a plan. Tiro, Livia, and a few others huddled beneath a moth-eaten blanket near the grain sacks. You listened. Everyone did. No one interrupted. Not anymore. There's talk of escape again. Not the reckless kind. Not the lightning bolt run of desperation. This one sounds patient. It starts with a festival. Saturnalia. The only time of year where everything flip slaves feast, masters serve, and for a brief, wildly hypocritical moment, Rome pretends to acknowledge the humanity of its enslaved population. You're allowed to wear nicer clothes, speak out of turn, even joke at your master's expense. It's all a game, one that ends as soon as the sun rises. But it's something, and Tiro thinks it's enough. There will be wine, he whispered. Too much wine, and torches, and noise. And guards, you asked. Drunk or distracted, same thing. No date, no fixed plan, but the seed is planted. Today, though, you have olives to pick. Back in the grove, the trees lean under the weight of unharvested fruit. The work is methodical, numbing. Pluck, drop, repeat. There's no music, no chatter. Just hands moving through branches, day after day, until time becomes elastic. But not all is still. You've begun to notice things. Cassianthe overseers petties, more tense than usual. He eyes Tiro too often, lingers near the tool shed, whispers to Decimus late at night. You're not paranoid, not anymore. You've seen what betrayal looks like. You just don't know what it smells like yet. At midday, the sun high and cruel, you're summoned back to the villa. Again. Gaius wants something. He always does. This time, it's to serve at a dinner party. He wants country authenticity for his elite guests, a rustic performance, something quaint. So he selects you. You're bathed cold water, no soap handed a fresh tunic, stiff linen, uncomfortable. At the villa, things are as decadent as ever. The couches are arranged in semicircles, the wine flows like a broken aqueduct, and laughter echoes long before anything funny is said. You stand near the wall, invisible but always watching. Gaius brags. The olive oil from my estate pure untouched, pressed by the finest hands in Latium. You resist the urge to spit in the amphora. The guests nod. One of them a woman with gold-threaded hair and lips stained red from mulberries asks, "Do you name your slaves?" Gaius laughs. "Why name tools?" She giggles. "True, though this one," she gestures to you, "has intelligent eyes." For a second, you meet her gaze. Then look away. That's the trick. You're allowed to be noticed, never remembered. You retreat into the background, collect plates, refill goblets, offer figs. When the dinner ends, you're sent to the atrium to clean up, alone. But you're not alone for long. Marcia is there. She appears like a shadow, soft-footed and cloaked. She shouldn't be. Her father is in the city. Gaius didn't mention her arrival, but here she is. "I heard you were back," she says. You don't respond at first, then, "Only for tonight." She nods. "I brought you something." She hands you a scroll. It's old. The seal is cracked. Inside, lines of Greek. You squint. "It's Epictetus," she says. "He was a slave too, became a philosopher." You don't know. Whether to laugh or cry, you settle for, "Is he still alive?" Number. Then he probably wasn't that good at escaping. She smiles. But he taught others how to endure. You don't ask why she's doing this, you know. She sees you. It's dangerous. She knows that too. "I won't see you again," she says softly. You nod. Then she's gone. And you're left with a scroll and a question you don't know how to ask. Why you? Back in the barracks, Tiro waits. "We've picked a date," he says. "Saturnalia, 4 nights from now." You glance at the others. Livia, Publius, a few new faces. "How many?" 7. You exhale. That's too many. But too late to stop now. The next day, you're back in the fields. Cassian watches you like a hawk dipped in oil. His suspicion stinks like vinegar. You pretend to stumble, act slow, let the role fit. At night, Tiro draws a crude map in the dirt. There's a trail behind the grain silo. It leads into the forest. If we make it there, we split. Smaller groups, less noticeable. And if we're caught? He shrugs. We won't be. You've learned that hope is not a strategy, but it's better than silence. The days crawl. Saturnalia approaches. On the morning of the festival, the villa is chaos. Gaius dons a ridiculous tunic embroidered with gold. The mistress wears flowers in her hair and declares herself Queen of Misrule. Slaves are given wine, meat, jokes are exchanged. Cassian is drunk before midday. Decimus is missing. No one knows where the overseer went, but the guards are relaxed, distracted. It's now or never. At nightfall, the plan unfolds. Bread is tucked into satchels, tunics wrapped tighter. A nail, sharpened for weeks, is hidden in your palm. Tiro nods. Go. You slip out, one by one, past the kitchen, through the garden, toward the silo. So far, so good. The forest rises ahead like a wall of ink. You break into a run. You don't look back. Not yet. Branches claw at your arms. Thorns catch your ankles. Breath burns in your lungs. But you're moving. You're moving. And then, a sound. Not branches. Not wind. Voices. Behind you. Shouting. They've seen us. Publius trips. You grab his arm. Keep running. Up ahead, the path splits. Tyro yells, "Split now. Go." You take the right fork. Livia stays with you. Footsteps behind. Too close. A clearing. You duck into a ditch. Cover yourselves with leaves. Silence. You don't breathe. The voices pass. Minutes stretch into eternity. Then, nothing. You made it. Maybe. You wait until morning. Then you rise. Your legs shake. Your face is scratched. Livia smiles. A real one. You are free. Number. Not yet. But you are closer. You don't know where the others are. You don't know what waits ahead. But for the first time in your life, no one tells you where to go. And that, in Rome, is a kind of miracle. You don't know what time it is, but the sun is just beginning to rise. Thin orange light seeps through the trees like honey bleeding from a cracked jar. The air smells different out Harapine, soil, something untamed. It's the first scent of freedom, and it nearly chokes you. You and Livia haven't spoken in hours. Not because there's nothing to say, but because words feel too fragile, too loud, like they might shatter the illusion that you actually made it. You're out, but you're also lost. Somewhere in the wilds of Latium, perhaps 50 miles from Rome, without maps, money, or sandals that fit properly. Your stomach growls like an offended senator. You're covered in mud, bruises, and irony. Welcome to your first day as a fugitive. Livia stops beside a stream and squats to drink, cupping water with her hands. You hesitate. What if it's poisoned? Then again, what if you die of thirst because you were worried about poisoned puddles? You drink. It's cold, sharp, real. Where now? She finally asks. It's a good question. You were a slave, not a cartographer. Rome's roads are vast, but they don't favor fugitives. Every turn might lead to a checkpoint, a patrol, or worsey bounty hunter. You've heard the stories. There are men who do nothing but hunt escaped slaves for coin. They ride horses. They carry whips, nets, chains. Sometimes they even bring dogs. The trick isn't just to flee. The trick is to vanish. But where? You remember something Tiro once said while cleaning fish guts out of an amphora. The best place to hide is where no one wants to look. So you head for the hills. Literally. The Apennines rise like jagged teeth in the distance. Cold, steep, dangerous, but less patrolled. Fewer people. More shadows to disappear into. The walk is punishing. You pass abandoned farms, rotting carts, skeletal goats. At one point, Livia trips on a root and sprains her ankle. You tear your tunic and wrap it tight, crafting a makeshift brace. She grits her teeth and keeps going. She doesn't complain. You're beginning to respect her in a way you didn't have time to be. 4. She's not loud, but she's iron. She's what survival looks like when it's worn by someone who's already died inside once and decided to come back swinging. By the second night, you find an old shepherd's hut. It's little more than a pile of stone and damp straw, but it has a roof and doesn't ask questions. You collapse inside. You sleep like you haven't in weeks. In the morning, it's time for a reckoning. You're alive, but you're also hungry. You haven't eaten in over 36 hours. Livia eyes the nearby olive trees. You know how to climb? You smirk. I worked on a latifundium. I know olives better than I know my own name. You climb. It's not graceful, but it works. You fill your sack with olives not quite ripe, but edible with salt if you had any. You don't. So you chew and wince through the bitterness. It's something. Over the next 2 days, you survive on roots, berries, and dumb luck. You avoid roads. You bathe in streams. You count every minute, not in chains, as a victory. And then, on the fourth day, you see it. Smoke. Not wild, not accidental, controlled. A fire in a hearth. Civilization. You and Livia creep forward. There's a cottage, small, with faded frescoes on the outside. A goat in the front yard. No guards, no weapons. Just an old woman. She's stirring a pot over a fire, humming. You exchange a look with Livia. Approach carefully, slowly, hands raised. The woman looks up, squints, then laughs. You two look like Saturn threw you out of a wine barrel. She invites you inside. You hesitate. Kindness in Rome is often a trick, but something about her is different. She doesn't ask your names. She doesn't ask where you're from. She just feeds you. Barley stew, flatbread, pickled onions. You cry. Not big tears. Just small, silent ones that run down your dirt-streaked face while you chew. Later, as you help her gather herbs, she speaks again. You're not the first. You glance at her. She nods at the hills. Slaves, runaways, bandits, all of them pass through eventually. Some make it, some don't. You ask why she helps. She shrugs. Because the gods stopped listening a long time ago, and someone has to. Her name is Domitia. She's widowed. Her son died in the army. She lives alone, out here, with goats and ghosts. She doesn't ask for anything in return. But you help anyway. You fix her roof. Livia sews her tunic. You gather firewood. It's the first time in your life you've worked without being ordered to. It feels strange. It feels like dignity. You stay 3 days. Then you move on. Because kindness is a gift, but staying would be a burden. You say goodbye at dawn. Domitia hugs Livia and presses a pouch into your hand. Salt and something sweet. It's dried figs. You nearly cry again. Then you walk. Back into the woods. Back into the silence. But something's changed. You're no longer just fleeing. You're going somewhere. Not a place. A future. Maybe a port town. Maybe Greece. Maybe Egypt. Somewhere Rome isn't watching. You walk until your feet blister. And when you finally stop, it's beside a river. You wash. You look up at the stars. And you whisper your real name again. Not because you're afraid, but because you're ready to remember it. Tomorrow, you'll move again. But tonight, for the first time, you're free. You wake up to the sharp sting of winter in the air. Not the romantic kind, no snow, no charming frost on the olive trees, just a biting cold that settles in your bones and makes every joint protest as you shift on the dirt floor. You're back in the countryside, shackled to your duties and, occasionally, your fellow slaves. But there's a tension now, a simmering awareness that things are different. You're different. You tried to escape once, failed, yes, but the attempt left a mark, not just the bruise on your head, but something deeper, a rumor, a symbol. You became a story whispered at night, a myth in progress. The one who ran. You're still here, still bent over fields and presses, but now, when people glance at you, there's a flicker of curiosity, maybe admiration, maybe fear. You've tasted the edge of possibility, and it clings to you like olive oil in your skin. But you're not the only one changing. The estate itself feels more restless. The overseer, Rufus, has become more erratic. He barks orders, even when there's no work to be done. He paces at night, drinks more than usual. Some say the landowner is coming from Rome to inspect the harvest. Others whisper that Rufus is hiding shortages. No one really knows, but the slaves know enough to tread lightly. A nervous overseer is worse than a cruel one. At least cruelty is predictable. Your tasks remain brutal and relentless. The olives are done for the season, but now it's time to clear the fields. Dead stalks, stubborn roots, stones that must be lifted, hauled, and dumped. Your hands are thick with calluses, your nails broken and black. You barely recognize them anymore. They don't feel like yours. And then one day, something unexpected happens. You're pulled aside, not by Rufus, not by a whip or a summons, but by one of the dispensatores, the house steward from the villa. You remember him, Livius, pale eyes, thin lips, smells like vinegar. He's out of place here, dusting off imaginary dirt from his toga, like the entire countryside is beneath him. You, he says, pointing, you're coming back with me. You don't understand. Back? To the villa? You think maybe it's a punishment. Maybe they've finally decided to flay you in a courtyard where it's more dramatic. Or maybe they just need someone to polish marble again. You hope it's marble. The journey back is quiet. You're not shackled, just watched. A single guard accompanies you, but he's more interested in his wine flask than your escape potential. You pass familiar roads. Trees you remember from your first journey. A fig stand that still leans at a strange angle. The sky is gray and the wind smells like charcoal. When you arrive at the villa, it's like stepping into another world. You'd almost forgotten what wealth looked like. The bright mosaics, the high atrium ceilings, the obnoxious parrots squawking Latin phrases. Everything is cleaner, louder, more artificial. And yet, you feel oddly at home. This is where your story started, where you learned to survive by listening. Gaius is there, as ever, lounging dramatically on a couch and pretending to read. He looks older, more bloated. His tunic is stained with something purplish, either wine or an attempt at dyeing gone wrong. He barely glances at you. Ah, the prodigal broom returns, he mutters. Good, you'll clean the triclinium. The magistrate's coming. That's it. No threats, no lectures, just a new order. You're back in domestic service. And for the first time in months, your ankles are free. You're not sure whether to be relieved or terrified. You learn quickly that little has changed inside the villa. The hierarchy, the routines, the whispered betrayal saw are still alive and well. Linus is still here, still correcting everyone's Latin. Tiro is gone. Sold, they say, to a merchant who liked his handwriting. You wonder if he ever finished carving that comb. Your new duties are familiar. Cleaning, serving, disappearing. The rhythms of this place are etched into your bones. But there's an edge to it now. You're more careful, more deliberate. You watch everything. You remember everything. And you notice something strange. The new boy. His name is Maximus, which is hilarious because he's about 4 feet tall and shaped like a broom handle. He's 14, maybe, and fresh from somewhere Gaul, possibly, judging by the way he butchers Latin. He's been assigned to the baths, which is both a privilege and a curse. You're in charge of showing him the ropes. On his first day, he drops a jug of oil. It shatters. The floor is a slick disaster. The mistress slips and screams like she's been assassinated. Maximus is frozen. You step in, mop quickly, apologize profusely. Later, you tell him how to carry the jug properly, how to bow at the right angle, how to look invisible without looking suspicious. He listens, learns. You see yourself in him, and you start teaching. Quietly, patiently. In a world designed to erase identity, you pass on the little tricks of survival. How to fake a limp to avoid heavier chores, which wines Gaius hoards in the cellar, where the best leftovers get dumped. And Maximus tells stories in return, about his village, his mother's garden, a river that sang when the wind was right. He laughs too loudly sometimes. You shush him, but you don't stop him. His stories remind you of something you thought you'd buried. Yourself. Weeks pass. The magistrate arrives, this time with less fanfare and more demands. Gaius is drunk by midday, which makes serving him easier. The cook has a nervous breakdown over the fish sauce. Linus flirts with a guest and gets slapped, the usual. And then, one afternoon, Gaius calls for you. Not to clean, not to fetch, to read. He has a scroll, a letter. He can't be bothered. Read this, he grunts, waving you forward. Your hands tremble slightly. You haven't read aloud in months. You scan the scrollets, a contract, grain delivery, payment disputes. You read smoothly, clearly. Gaius grunts again. Good. You're not as dumb as you look. He tosses a coin onto the floor. You don't move. He raises an eyebrow. Take it, he says. You do. That night you sit in the kitchen, staring at the coin. It's not worth much. A bronze quadrans, maybe, but it's yours. Technically. You hide it beneath a loose brick in the wall. Over the next few days, Gaius calls on you more often. To read, to write, once to draft an invitation to a senator's dinner. He doesn't praise you, but he doesn't insult you either. That's practically affection in Roman terms. And then he asks something else. Do you know numbers? You nod. He pulls out wax tablets, a stylus. He shows you records debts, shipments, payments. His steward has been fudging numbers. Gaius suspects it. Wants confirmation. You check the math. You find the error. Gaius laughs. Calls the steward in. Fires him on the spot. Has his ear boxed in front of the entire household. Then turns to you. You're my new dispensator. You don't know what to say. You've seen what happens to slaves who rise too high, they fall faster. But this is a lifeline, and you're not stupid. You accept. Your duties shift again. No more scrubbing floors. You spend your days with scrolls and styluses, tracking shipments, checking debts, even helping Gaius negotiate trades. You're not free, not even close, but you have power now. Influence. Maximus still works the baths, but he looks at you differently, not with envy, with hope. You slip him better food when you can, teach him Latin. Slowly, you start saving again coins tucked behind bricks, under floorboards, in a crack behind the garden statue of Venus. You hear whispers now, other slaves talking about you, the one who ran, the one who rose. Some think you're lucky, others think you're cursed. But you've survived. You've adapted. And in a world that feeds on obedience, adaptation is the first step to rebellion. You wake to the sound of chain snot, the jangle of your own this time, but others, dozens of them. It's like a metal symphony played badly by the world's angriest blacksmith. The olive fields are behind you now, not because you escaped. No, your brief rebellion ended with a concussion and a new scar above your right ear. The overseer, Rufus, decided you were too clumsy for pressing olives. Not worth killing, but not worth trusting either, so now you've been transferred. New place, new horror. You're marched in a line with other slaves, chained at the ankles and wrists. No one speaks. There's nothing left to say. You could be heading anywhere, a salt mine, a construction site, a gladiator school, if the gods are really in a joking mood. But then the road tilts downward. Down and down, into the mountain. You've heard whispers about this place, the sulfur mines of Baye. They say the air kills faster than the work, that the rocks weep poison, that men go in and don't come out. Not because they die, though many do, but because the ones who survive aren't really men anymore. They're something else. Hollow. You breathe in. It smells like rotten eggs and death. Congratulations. You're now a miner. You're stripped of your tunic. Miners don't need clothing, apparently. You're handed a pick, a shovel, and a dented metal bowl for your meals. You're also given a number 760 twow hitch you're told to memorize. That's your name now. If you forget it, you get beaten. If you say your old name, you get beaten. If you speak at all without permission, yes, beaten. You quickly realize that beaten is less a punishment here and more a form of punctuation. Your first job is hauling debris. Simple enough in theory: dig, scoop, dump. Except you're doing it in a tunnel so narrow you have to crouch the entire time. The ceiling leaks, the walls sweat, the air burns your throat, and after an hour, you're already coughing black. The man next to you, number 613, leans over during a water break and whispers, "Don't breathe too deep. Kills faster." Great tip. Shame your lungs didn't hear it in time. Time passes weirdly underground. There's no sun, no stars, no roosters crowing. Just the routine. Dig, dump, carry, collapse. Eat, sleep, repeat. Except sleep is generous. You collapse on a plank in the communal chamber. The room is dimly lit with torches that spit more smoke than flame. The air is thick, hot, and angry. At least 50 bodies packed together like sausages in a pot. You can't tell if the smell comes from the sulfur, the sweat, or the despair. Probably all three. It's like sleeping in someone else's nightmare. You dream of light, of open sky, of your old life. Then a whip cracks, and it's time to do it all over again. They don't tell you what you're mining. Doesn't matter. You shovel it anyway. Red dust, gray powder, chunks of rock that smell like spoiled vinegar. One day, a fellow miner tries to pocket a shiny piece. Looks like silver. Could be worthless. Doesn't matter. The guards catch him. They don't even speak, just drag him out. You hear the screams for over an hour. No one ever tries again. The days begin to blend. You learn to read the shift changes by the scream-searly screams mean morning. Midday screams mean second shift. No screams, nighttime, rest time. You get used to the taste of ash in your mouth, the way your fingernails turn black and your teeth start to feel loose. Your body adapts in the worst ways. Your nose bleeds when you sleep. Your back bends unnaturally. You stop sweating. That's not a good sign. People disappear. Sometimes they die. Sometimes they're transferred, which is just a polite way of saying buried under a rock slide and forgotten. Then one day you're told to follow a man named Varro. He's not a guard, not a miner either. He's something in between, too important to shovel, not important enough to whip. Varro leads you to a different tunnel, deeper than the rest. You've been chosen, he says, his voice dry like sand. You want to ask, chosen for what? But you've learned not to speak. You walk for what feels like hours, deeper into the mountain until the air stops smelling like sulfur and starts smelling like metal. A furnace glows at the end of the tunnel, massive, glorious, terrifying. This is where the ore goes. This is the forge. And guess what? You're the new fire stoker. Working the forge is both better and worse. You're not in the tunnel anymore. That's good. You can stand upright. You can see fire. You can feel heat constant, crushing, soul-melting heat. That's bad. Your job is to feed the fires with charcoal and keep the bellows moving. You're shackled to the station so you can't run. You wouldn't anyway. Where would you go? Up? Out? Into sunlight? Don't be ridiculous. Your skin blisters in the first hour, peels by the second, turns leathery by the third. By day 3, you no longer recognize your hands. By day 5, you forget you ever had skin that didn't hurt. Still, the forge has one benefit: conversation. The stoker next to you, number 248, is chatty. Was a sailor once, he tells you during a break. Got caught smuggling Egyptian perfume. Worth it. Smelled like heaven. You try to laugh. Your lungs disagree. Still, it's nice to remember people used to have lives. You tell him you used to sell wine. He chuckles. Should have brought a bottle. Then comes the accident. Not yours. Number 248 stumbles near the furnace. Just for a second. He doesn't fall in, but the guard sees. Lazy, the guard says. 2 others come over, drag him away. You never see 248 again. The next day, someone hands you his shovel. No words, just the transfer of pain. You start counting days again, or trying to. You scratch marks on the wall when no one's looking. 12, then 15, then 23. But then, The wall collapses. Not metaphorically, literally. A tremor shakes the mind during your shift. Not unusual, this place shudders like an old man with a grudge, but this time it's big. You drop your tools. The forge shakes. The roof groans. Rocks fall. A scream cuts the air in half. You dive under the workbench. It doesn't help much. A chunk of stone hits your shoulder, and everything goes sideways. When you wake, you're in the infirmary, which is just a fancy word for the room where they dump injured slaves to see if they live. You've dislocated your shoulder. The medica fellow slave with more bandages than training pops it back in with all the delicacy of a collapsing aqueduct. You scream. He shrugs. Still alive, he mutters. Lucky you. While recovering, you're assigned to sweeping ash. Yes, ash. Your new job is to walk the mine paths with a broom and sweep the dust away. It's a joke job. You're being punished without being punished. It's like saying, you're useless, but we still need you to die slowly. But guess what? You don't hate it. Sweeping ash means walking. Walking means seeing. Seeing means observing. You start to map the mine in your head. Which tunnels flood, which cracks shift, which guards are lazy, which areas are collapsing. Information is power, again. You sweep and you watch. You learn the names of the guards, the times of the shifts. You start talking to other sweepers, quietly, briefly. They call you the broom prophet. You plan nothing, but you think everything. And one day, you hear a whisper. Revolt. That word, that beautiful, cursed word. You ignore it. For a week, then 2. Then you ask quietly what it means. They say there's a plan. Not from above, from below. A tunnel collapse. Engineered. A distraction. Then a breakout. Foolish, you say. But your heart beats faster. It's foolish, yes. But so is dying slowly in the dark. You ask what they need. They say, someone who knows the tunnels. Someone who sweeps ash. You sweep slower that day, on purpose. You listen to the rocks. You trace the cracks. You know which wall is ready to fall. You point it out to the right person. 2 nights later, it collapses. It looks like an accident. It isn't. Guards scramble. A shift change is delayed. In the chaos, 5 slaves escape through the rear shaft. You're not one of them, but you helped, and suddenly, you're someone. They start calling you the smuggler, the man who trades silence for freedom. You deny everything, of course, but you smile, just a little. More whispers come, more plans. Nothing happens, but the fear has changed. It's no longer the fear of dying. It's the fear of missing your chance to live. You still sweep. You still cough. You still ache. But you look at the fire differently now. Not as an end, as a beginning. And then one night, the guards change again. A new face, young, nervous, too clean. You strike up conversation. He ignores you. At first. Then you compliment his sword. It's regulation issue. Nothing special. He softens. You learn his name is Marcellus. You ask where he's from. He says Umbria. You tell him your village had the best figs in the region. He laughs. That's it, a laugh. But that's all you need. Next day, you ask for water during your sweeping. He gives you a little extra. The day after that, he looks the other way when you take an extra bread crust. You don't ask for more, yet. But you wait, because that's what you do best. You're still a slave. You're still underground. You're still a number. But for the first time in months, you feel tall, not because of your spine, because of what's growing in you. A seed, a plan. And somewhere in the dark, between ash piles and sulfur pits, a spark. Would you survive a day in the Roman mines? Only if your soul could outlast your body. And even then, you'd never be the same again. Your shoulder still clicks when you rotate it too far, a grim souvenir from the mine collapse that almost turned you into cave decor. But you're alive. For now. And more than that, you're noticed. Not by the gods, those guys stopped returning your prayers ages ago, but by the slaves. They nod now when they pass you. Some offer you a scrap of bread, a longer glance, a whisper. We heard what you did. You deny everything. Smile just a little. In Rome's underworld, subtlety is survival. So is silence. But silence doesn't last long in a place like this. Because today, everything changes again. You're called before the overseer. That never means anything good. Rufus is gone, reassigned, or dead. No one's really sure. In his place stands a man called Secundus. He's younger, cleaner, and somehow more terrifying. Where Rufus ruled with brute force, Secundus operates like a chess master. Cold. Calculated. Always 5 moves ahead. He doesn't beat you. He doesn't even raise his voice. He looks you up and down like a merchant evaluating a slightly bruised fruit and says, "We've got a shipment bound for Rome. We need someone to accompany the cart, someone who can keep their mouth shut." You nod before he finishes the sentence. Because this isn't just a shipment, it's an opportunity. You don't ask what's in the crates. You already know. Sulfur bricks, chunks of iron ore, a few clay pots filled with something no one will explain. Dangerous things headed for dangerous men. You're shackled, but only at the ankles, this time loose enough to walk beside the oxen cart without tripping. Secundus assigns you a companion, an older slave named Cassia, whose eyes look like they've watched entire empires fall and shrugged. She doesn't speak much on the first day, just spits into the dust and mutters, "Keep your eyes down and your feet moving." You do. The road to Rome is long, hot, and crawling with soldiers, traitors, and thieves. You pass other carts, other slaves, beggars, children chasing each other through wheat fields. It's the most sky you've seen in months, the most sun. You squint so hard it gives you a headache. Cassia breaks her silence on the second night. "You were the one who sparked the collapse," she says over the campfire, chewing on a strip of goat meat like it personally insulted her. "Don't deny it. I can see it in your eyes. You've got that glint." You say nothing. She nods. "Good, smart. You'll last longer if you pretend to be stupid." A pause. But not too long. You reach Rome on the 4th day. It's everything and nothing like you remember. The forum buzzes. Temples gleam in the sun. Patricians lounge like bored gods while slaves scurry beneath them like ants in sandals. You're marched to a warehouse near the Tiber, past rows of sweating men unloading amphorae, crates, sacks of grain. Cassia handles the paperwork she can read, apparently, which surprises you until she snarls. Don't look so shocked. Not all slaves are furniture. Then the unexpected happens. You're not sent back to the mine. You're sold. Just like that. A new tag tied around your neck. A quick inspection. A slap to the ribs. "Looks strong," your new buyer says. You don't even learn his name. Your new life begins in Rome, proper inside a domus near the Palatine Hill. It belongs to a senator named Marcus Valerius. He's rich, old, and incredibly obsessed with appearances. His atrium has more marble than sense. His garden is shaped like a myth. His toga is whiter than mortality. You're not a laborer here. You're not even domestic staff. You're a personal attendant. Which sounds nice, until you realize it means being on call every second of the day. You sleep next to his bed. You fetch his writing tablets, warm his bathwater, stand behind him for hours while he debate. The Senate's latest grain policy. You become furniture with a pulse. Marcus has 2 hobbies, politics and himself. He rehearses speeches to you, not for you, to you. You nod when appropriate, frown when he says something profound. He sometimes forgets your name and calls you Sandals. You don't correct him. Then, one day, he brings you to the Curia Juliathi Senate House. Not inside. You wait by the steps. But you watch. And you learn. Power, real power, doesn't shout. It whispers. And you start to understand something chilling. Rome doesn't run on slaves, it runs on appearances. The illusion of order. The illusion of control. A week into your new post, you meet Lucilla. She's a house slave too assigned to Marcus's daughter. Sharp eyes, sharper tongue. She calls you Mouse because of how quietly you move. It's not unkind. Lucilla knows everything. Who's cheating on whom? Which guards can be bribed? Which kitchen maid is pregnant? She offers to share gossip in exchange for one thing: access. Access to Marcus's personal chambers. Specifically, his scroll cabinet. What do you want? You ask. She leans in close. Secrets, that's the real currency in Rome. You tell her you'll think about it, but you already have. At night, you lie on your straw mat beside Marcus's sleeping couch, staring at the frescoed ceiling, thinking about the mines, the forge, the boy who died, the escape that wasn't, the chains that still wrap your ankles, even when they're not visible. Lucilla whispers things in the courtyard when no one's listening. She knows of a scribe who works for the praetor. He's corrupt, fond of gambling, and in need of silence. If you could write, she says, you could help him forge papers. A man like that can grant freedom for the right price. You don't say, I can't read. You say, teach me. She agrees. Learning Latin by candlelight with stolen scrolls and whispered vowels is dangerous, but also exhilarating. You copy letters on a wax tablet, your fingers cramping, your mind racing. Every symbol is a rebellion, a dagger disguised as a squiggle. And slowly, you begin to understand. Domus, house. Service. Slave. Libertas. Freedom. You don't say the last one out loud. Not yet. Meanwhile, Marcus grows more agitated by the day. Rumors swirl, revolts in the provinces, a scandal involving grain shipments, another senator poisoned by his cupbearer. He starts locking his bedroom door. He stops trusting his steward. He has the garden slaves flogged because the roses bloomed unevenly. Power, it seems, makes men paranoid. And paranoid men make mistakes. One night, Marcus falls asleep with his scroll case unlocked. You don't even hesitate. You take two. One is a shipment manifest from Sicily. The other Lucilla's requestus, a debt ledger tied to a senator's son. You deliver it the next morning. Lucilla looks at you like you just handed her a kingdom. Maybe you did. 2 days later, the scribe arrives. He doesn't look powerful. He looks tired, drunk, and vaguely insulted by the sun. But he hands you a small sealed scroll and says, not freedom, yet, but a path. You don't open it. Not because you're afraid. Because you're ready. Then, Marcus falls ill. Really ill. The villa plunges into chaos. Doctors swarm. Incantations are muttered. Pigeons are sacrificed. Nothing works. Marcus moans through the night, fevered, raving. You wipe his brow. You empty his chamber pot. You hold his hand when he claws at the air and cries for his dead mother. And in the morning, he dies. Death in Rome is complicated. There's mourning, public readings, a procession with actors in ancestor masks. You don't participate. Slaves are tools, not mourners. Marcus's heirs arrive. They don't ask your name. They begin the inventory. You're listed as Asset 142, household male, capable, literate, questionable. Lucilla disappears, the scribe too. You fear the worst. Then a steward hands you a scroll. No explanation, just a name and a direction. You wait until nightfall. Then you run. You find Lucilla in a tenement near the Aventine. She's different now, hair shorter, clothes cleaner, eyes sharper. She hands you a new scroll. Inside, Forged manumission papers, a name you don't recognize. Congratulations, she says, you're free. You shake your head. They'll see it's fake. She smiles. Not if you play the part. So now you walk the streets of Rome not as a slave, but as something else. Not a citizen, not yet, but no longer property. You get a job at a bakery. You rent a room. You buy your first tunic with your own money. You eat figs, fresh ones. Every night you trace the scar on your shoulder and whisper your old name. Then your new one. Then neither, because you are no longer what they made you. You are becoming. And in Rome, that's the most dangerous thing you can be. Would you survive a day as a Roman slave? Maybe. But to survive freedom aft? Slavery? That's the real question. There is a certain kind of silence that falls in the city of Rome after midnight. It isn't peace, it's anticipation. As though the streets themselves are holding their breath, waiting for something, anything, to break the stillness. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once and goes quiet. A cart clatters over cobblestones, wheels squeaking like gossiping old women. And from the kitchens of the Domus, you stir. You're back in Rome. You were returned from the fields with little fanfare, just another broken piece of state property that had to be repurposed. Gaius had pulled strings claiming you were valuable, which really meant you could count, clean, and hadn't died yet. And now you've been reassigned again not to the villa's inner circle, but to a slightly more dangerous post, courier slave. Which means you get to walk the streets of Rome with important scrolls tucked into your belt and a whole universe of hazards waiting around every corner. At first, you were thrilled. Anything but the fields. Anything but Rufus and his clubs and the graves hidden under olive trees. But the city has its own kind of violence. Quieter, more elegant, the sort that wears a tunic stitched with gold thread and smiles while giving orders that end with someone choking in the Tiber. Today's assignment: deliver a sealed scroll to Senator Pompilius, who lives in a domus so large it needs its own postal district. You'd think sending a slave with no rights to carry secret information through one of the most cutthroat cities in the ancient world would be a bad idea. But the Romans? They love risk. You leave just before sunrise, when the smell of baking bread mixes with last night's sewage. The air is heavy with charcoal smoke and the sharp bite of vinegar from cleaning slop. Your sandals slap the stone rhythmically as you avoid puddles and drunks, pickpockets, and philosophers. You pass other slaves, some carrying water, some leading goats, one being dragged by a toddler more vicious than most Roman generals. You nod at a baker's apprentice you recognize. He doesn't nod back. You're still a slave. You cross the forum, where senators begin to gather like vultures around a carcass of ambition. They talk of grain prices, of taxes, of who insulted whom at the last dinner party. Two are already arguing, veins bulging, robes flapping over a statue's placement. You slip past unnoticed, scroll hidden under your tunic. The city is alive, not just in the way of buildings and business, but in whispers. Rome is a city built on secrets. Behind every marble wall is a scandal, behind every fountain a plot, and beneath every senator's polished smile, a skeleton that hasn't yet been exhumed. You've started listening, not because you're a spy, but because it's the only power you have left. Information. Who's sleeping with their brother's wife, who bribed the magistrate, which noble is secretly Greek. Who owns how many slaves, and which ones are missing? You reach Senator Pompilius's home and are made to wait at the door, like a stray dog hoping for scraps. Eventually, a steward collects the scroll. He doesn't speak to you. He doesn't even look at you. On your way back, you take the long route, not because you're lazy, but because you need to stop by the Subura Districta slum so densely packed and steeped in chaos that even the rats walk in pairs. Here, slaves whisper a different language, a language of resistance. You're meeting someone. He calls himself Marcus. It's not his real name. He used to work in the mines at least, that's what he claims. Lost an eye, gained a limp, but kept his wits and a tongue sharp enough to gut a senator. Marcus is building something. Not a rebellion, nothing so grand, more like a network, a whisper chain. Messages passed in scraps of bread, signals sent with broken tiles left in windows, rumors turned into warnings. You're part of it now. You pass a loaf of bread to a woman selling herbs. Inside is a folded parchment with a map, a slave shipment coming in from Hispania. 20 names, 3 children, 1 sick. The woman nods as you walk away. She'll pass it on. Somewhere, a group of freedmen will buy one of those slaves and smuggle them out. It's not much, but it's something. Back at Gaius's villa, life continues with its usual cruelty wrapped in pleasantries. The mistress complains about her hairdresser. Gaius is in a foul mood because someone misquoted Virgil. The steward is threatening to brand a kitchen slave for stealing honey. You know he didn't do it. It was the mistress. She eats it by the spoonful in the bath when she thinks no one is watching. You watch. You always watch. That night, you overhear something. Gaius has guests 2 senators and a merchant. They're drunk, laughing loudly, careless. One mentions a shipment of arms bound for Sicily. Another laughs about a Greek philosopher being tortured for writing satire. But it's the third guest who says, something that stops you cold. They're planning a census, full count. Even the slaves. They want to know who's where and how many. A census. It sounds boring, even bureaucratic. But to a slave, it's terrifying. Because once you're counted, you're harder to hide, harder to move, harder to free. If Rome starts keeping track of its property like gold or grain, your dreams of freedom become more than difficult, they become impossible. You report this to Marcus the next morning. He listens. He nods. He doesn't smile. That means we move faster, he says. We get the kids out first. It's strange, having something to do beyond surviving, a purpose, a plan. Most slaves only get that when they become freedmen, and even then, it's usually just opening a shop and praying no one remembers they used to be a kitchen mop. But you have a role now, a tiny one, a whisper in the whirlwind. It's enough. For now. But Rome doesn't sleep long, and neither do secrets. That week, something cracks. A slave in another household you used to work with gets caught stealing ink. Just ink. But he's beaten until his ribs splinter. In his delirium, he mentions names. Your name, Marcus's, others. You feel the air change, heavier, like thunder before a storm. The next day, the guards arrive. Not the usual ones the city watch, soft-bellied and bribe-happy. These are palace guards, real soldiers, sharp eyes, sharper swords. They come to question Gaius. Then they come to question his slaves. They line you up in the courtyard. The sun is merciless, like a god angry you forgot his holiday. One by one, they ask you the same thing. Do you know of any plots? You say no. You say you're loyal. You say you don't even know what a plot is. They believe you. Mostly. But they take Tiro. Just take him. You don't see him again. That night, the kitchen is silent. Even the rats are quiet. You sit by the cold hearth and think about what Marcus said. We get the kids out first. Maybe you weren't fast enough. Maybe they were. Either way, you know this. Rome is watching now, counting, listening. And for a slave who's learned how to listen back, that's both a blessing and a curse. Because what you hear next might break you, or it might be the thing that finally sets you free. You are staring at a wall. Not because it's particularly interesting, though the cracks do form a surprisingly convincing map of Sicily, but because staring at anything else means thinking about tomorrow, or tonight, or what just happened. And you've had enough of that for now. You're in a new place again, not by choice, obviously. You didn't book this relocation through a travel agency. You were sold. Again. this time to a Roman official named Cassius Lentulus, who somehow has the personality of both mildew and thunder. He runs a training school for gladiators, also known as a ludus. And guess what? You, a person who once got winded chasing a goat, are now a trainee. Yes, welcome to the glamorous, blood-soaked world of the gladiator slave. Turns out, after the near escape and your unfortunate brush with rebellious whispers back at the latifundium, your previous master decided you were too much trouble. So he sold you off to someone who solves trouble with swords and sand. Your first lesson begins with a punch. Not metaphorically. You are literally punched in the stomach by a retired Germanic brute named Varus, who smells like raw onions and contempt. He's your new instructor. He also speaks 4 words of Latin, all of them aggressive. There's no warm-up, no stretching, just pain. You're tossed a wooden sword rudis, they call itend, told to defend yourself. From what, you ask? From Varus. Surprise. You block his first swing by instinct and dislocate your wrist. That's how the first day goes. They say training to become a gladiator is an honor. You may die with dignity, they shout. You'd prefer to live with anonymity, thank you. Still, you learn fast, not because you want to, but because people who don't tend to disappear. The ludus is like a meat grinder with a monthly performance review. Survive your training, and you get to fight for real. Lose in training, and you're either maimed or retired early, which is a polite way of saying they throw your body in the Tiber. You're surrounded by other mensum prisoners of war, some condemned criminals, some born into this life. There's one named Alecto, a Thracian who once bit off another man's ear. He speaks Latin better than you do, but prefers snarling. Then there's Juba, a quiet Numidian who trains like he's already dead. They don't talk much. Nobody does. You're all trying to survive long enough to get lucky or be forgotten. Your daily routine now includes waking up before dawn to run laps around a sand pit, practicing sword strikes against wooden poles that do not fight back but still hurt, eating a gruel so thick it doubles as a building material, getting screamed at in Mull, Tipple languages, watching someone get their jaw broken and pretending that's totally normal. And then there's the branding. One afternoon, after you collapse from exhaustion, a man with very clean hands and very dead eyes appears with a hot iron. You now bear the mark of Cassius Lentulusa, tiny, stylized L above your right hip. It's meant to signify ownership, loyalty, and tradition. To you, it's just another reminder that you're less than a man. Sometimes, the trainers give you inspirational speeches meant to stir the blood. You fight for honor. You fight for glory. You fight for Rome. You fight because you were sold. Let's not get poetic. A few weeks in, something changes. You get better. Not heroic battle scene better, but enough to avoid injury. Enough to make Varus grunt in mild approval. That's basically affection from him. Your muscles ache constantly. Your reflexes sharpen. You stop thinking about escape. Not because you've given up, but because there's nowhere to run. And oddly enough, this place has structure rules. The rules are brutal, yes, but at least they're clear. Unlike your days in the villa or the fields, here you know exactly what's expected. Don't die. Simple. Then comes your first Munusa public exhibition match. Not to the death, don't worry, yet. It's for sport, for entertainment, for Rome's insatiable appetite for violence wrapped in ritual. The arena is smaller than the Colosseum, but it still holds a few thousand people. You and 3 others are marched out in armor that smells like decades of fear. Your weapon is real this time. And your opponent? A disgraced legionnaire with a grudge and a scar across his face that looks suspiciously like a map of the Danube. The crowd cheers. Trumpets sound. You do not throw up. Small victories. The fight is clumsy, desperate. You don't win so much as survive. You duck more than you strike. But in the end, you're still standing. Your opponent is not. He groans and yields. The crowd boos apparently. They expected more blood. Cassius is delighted. He pats your shoulder like you're a prized pig. You've shown potential, which means he's not going to sell you. Yet. Later that night, you're given wine. Not much, just enough to taste something other than iron and sand. Alecto nods at you across the training yard. You nod back. That's it. That's the closest you've come to a friendship in months. But something else happens, too. The next morning, when you pass a polished shield, you catch your reflection and for a moment, you don't recognize yourself. Your face is thinner, harder, older. You've changed. Not just on the outside, inside too. You're not just a victim anymore. You're not a hero either. But you've stopped waiting for rescue. Rome didn't break you. It reshaped you. You still hate it, but now you understand it. You understand that everything in this place is performance power, wealth, cruelty. The senators perform wealth. The masters perform authority. Even the crowds perform outrage and adoration, all depending on how much blood you spill. You perform survival. One evening, after training, you're approached by someone unexpected. His name is Leontius. He's a freedman former, slave-turned-administrator. He works for Cassius. He's small, balding, and wears the kind of toga that says, "I'm important, but not too important." "I've been watching you," he says. You don't respond. You've learned silence is safer than speech. "You're clever," he continues, "and not just with a sword." Still silent. He smiles. "I need someone who listens, pays attention, can keep secrets." Now you're listening. He offers you a new job, not freedom. Don't get excited, but a change. You'll still be a gladiator, but now you'll carry messages between important people. You'll listen, report, sometimes lie, occasionally manipulate. Think of it as advanced service, Leontius says, as if the phrase doesn't reek of danger. You agree. What choice do you have? And suddenly, you have purpose again. Not joy, not power, but movement. Something more than just training and bleeding and hoping not to die. You become a whisper in the ear of Rome. You carry notes sealed with wax you're not allowed to break, but sometimes do. You learn names, faces, schemes. You start to understand the machinery of power. Who pulls the strings, who owes money, who hides what. You even witness a senator weep because his favorite cook was poached by a rival. These people rule the world, and they are ridiculous. Sometimes you think, if slaves ran Rome, it would be neater, meaner, maybe, but cleaner, and perhaps fairer. You still train, you still fight, you still wear the armor, but now you have an edge information. It's dangerous, but it makes you valuable. And value in your world means life. For now. You've been here for over a year now, maybe 2. You've stopped counting the days. You measure time by the number of beatings, the faces of the overseers who come and go, and the state of your back, which now carries more scars than skin. Your mornings no longer surprise you, they ambush you. You're awake before the sun, not because anyone asked you to be, but because the fear of sleeping through a whip crack is stronger than sleep itself. You've become a creature of instinct, like a hunted animal that wakes at the slightest shift in air. This chapter of your life, dear reader, is not glamorous, but it is a turning point. You're still at the latifundium, that endless sprawl of olive trees and human misery. Only now, you've been promoted or, rather, relocated is the better term to a different kind of hell, the construction crew. Apparently, Rome needs a new aqueduct. And guess who's got the privilege of laying stone in the heat of an Italian summer? That's right, you. Your new assignment starts with the overseer reading off names in the kind of bored, half-drunken slur that suggests he'd rather be anywhere else, possibly dead. He points a sausage-like finger at you, Tiro, and 6 others. One is a Thracian with arms the size of amphorae. Another is a Gaul who hasn't spoken since he got here. And then there's Servia, a woman who works like 3 men and glares like she wants to kill the sun. You're loaded into a cart once more, though this time with fewer wheels and more splinters. The journey is bumpy, hot, and filled with the unmistakable aroma of no one has bathed in weeks. The cart stops on a hillside overlooking a half-built aqueducta skeleton of arches stretching across the countryside like a massive centipede frozen. Mid-crawl. You stare. It's impressive. Also terrifying. The overseer, this one's name, is Publius, and he looks like a thumb with eyebrow sexplanes the plan. You will carry stones, you will stack stones, you will chisel, lift, sweat, and bleed. You will not talk, you will not stop, you will not question. You will work, and you will like it. Publius ends his speech with a shrug and a spit. No one claps. Your first day is a masterclass in what not to do when building an aqueduct. The sun is merciless, your tools are dull. Your knowledge of Roman engineering is non-existent. You drop a stone on your foot within the first hour and barely avoid breaking a toe. The Thracian, you later learn his name is Delos, lifts twice as much as anyone else and never breaks a sweat. He also never blinks. You're not sure he's human. By midday, your tunic is soaked, your hands are raw, and your back feels like it's been trampled by an ox. Publius yells at everyone constantly, but seems to save his most creative insults for you. You learn that, in his words, you are slower than a senile tortoise and dumber than a blind mule. You smile and nod. You've learned not to react. Reaction gets you punishment. Obedience gets you less punishment. Silence, however, is your currency. You pay with it constantly. By nightfall, you're too tired to eat. You collapse on the dirt with your fellow workers, your muscles humming with the kind of pain that feels permanent. Tiro groans beside you, muttering something about wine and freedom. Servia snores like a bear. You stare at the stars and wonder if Jupiter is laughing at you. Probably. Day after day, you return to the stone line. Your hands grow calloused. Your arms grow stronger. You learn to brace your knees before lifting. You learn how to balance stone blocks on your shoulder. You even learn to carve symbols into the aqueduct stones. Nothing grand, just tiny scratches. A curve here, a line there. A secret message, just for you. Proof you were here, that you existed. Then comes the accident. Not your Servia's. She slips while balancing on scaffolding. A piece of stone shifts beneath her. You hear a sharp cry and turn just in time to see her plummet, landing hard on the packed earth below. Everyone freezes. Even Publius. Servia lies motionless, one leg bent at a sickening angle, blood pooling beneath her arm. Publius curses and stalks off, muttering something about replacement slaves. The others gather around her in silence. No one dares speak. You kneel beside her and see that her eyes are open but hazy. I'm fine, she lies. She's not. For days, she can't move. You and Tiro take turns feeding her, cleaning her wounds, hiding her from Publius's wrath. You fashion a crude splint from wood and cloth. It's not perfect, but it's enough to keep her legs stable. A week later, she stands. Barely, but it's enough. The others start calling her the Iron Woman. She grins like a lioness. You don't realize it at first, but something's happening. You're not just surviving anymore. You're building a team, a tribe, a family in the loosest, most dysfunctional sense of the word. Delos starts teaching you how to chisel stone without cracking it. He does it silently, with grunts and nods. Tiro invents a song about Publius's chin that becomes a nightly ritual. Even the Gaul. His name turns out to be Brennus starts sharing stolen bread and occasionally muttering jokes in a gravelly whisper. The work is still brutal. The days are still long. But you're no longer alone. Then comes the inspection. Once a month, a Roman engineer visits the site. He's not a slave, he's a citizen, educated, perfumed, and very impressed with himself. His name is Lucullus. He has a quill behind one ear and a permanent smirk on his face. He doesn't talk to you directly, of course. He talks to Publius, who bows so low it's embarrassing. Lucullus strolls around, inspecting the arches, measuring the slope of the aqueduct, making notes on a wax tablet. Then he pauses near one of your stones. He frowns. He leans in. He scrapes away a bit of dust, revealing one of your carvings. You freeze. It's a tiny symbol, a spiral and 2 dots, meaningless to him, but not to you. Lucullus straightens, eyes narrowing. Who did this? He asks. Publius stares at the symbol like it's a snake. You think quickly. Before Publius can speak, you step forward. I did, you say. Lucullus blinks. Apparently, your ability to speak Latin surprises him. What is it? You smile. A maker's mark, sir. For quality control, so we know which blocks to double-check. There's a long pause. Lucullus considers this. Then he nods. Efficient, Roman. He moves on. You exhale so hard you nearly collapse. That night, Publius doesn't beat you. He gives you a new job. Mark the stones, he grunts. Make sure the others match. Just like that, you're no longer a hauler. You're a supervisor. A slave supervisor, sure, but in this world, that's practically a promotion. You begin organizing the work more efficiently. Delos moves the big blocks. Brennus and Tiro haul gravel. Servia oversees the scaffold teams. You scratch codes into the stone, symbols for team assignments, for flaws, for finished sections. You're building more than aqueducts now. You're building order. Lucullus visits more frequently. He starts bringing other engineers. They nod at your symbols. One even copies your system. No one credits you, of course. You're still a slave. But you feel something grow inside you, not pride. That's dangerous. Agency. A glimmer of it. Then comes a letter. It arrives rolled in wax and carried by a courier who looks like he's late for dinner. It's addressed to Publius. He reads it, grunts, and calls you over. Gaius wants you back. You blink. It takes a moment to remember who Gaius is. The villa, the cat, the boy with the platter. You're being reassigned again. Tomorrow, Publius says, be packed. You don't own anything, but the others do. Servia gives you a piece of flint wrapped in cloth. For fire, she says, or defense. Tiro hands you a carved wooden comb. From the nail, he says. Delos doesn't say anything. He just nods. And Brennus the Gaul grips your shoulder and mutters, don't forget. You won't. You board the cart the next morning, wrists bound but head held high. The aqueduct arches stretch behind you, silent and gleaming in the morning sun. You built that. You didn't sign it. But it has your mark. And that's enough. For now. It begins with a rooster. Not the pleasant kind that greets the sun with a chirpy crow, but the Roman kind, an ugly, squawking beast that sounds like it's dying every morning. Gaius bought it from a traveling merchant who promised it would ward off evil spirits. So far, the only thing it's warded off is sleep. You rise before it screeches because today is special. Not good, special, just different. Today is the Saturnalia feast. The irony is thick enough to spread on bread. Saturnalia, the Roman festival of reversal, where slaves and masters supposedly trade places. For one day, you get to wear your master's clothes. You eat at his table. You joke without fear. Or so the story goes. In reality, it's like being handed the keys to a palace and told the locks still work, but don't try them too hard. The villa is buzzing. Gaius wears a floppy red captha pileus, symbol of freedom on his head, which would be comical if not for the fact that he's the only free man here who wears it as a joke. He declares loudly, "Today, the slaves are masters. Let them rule us." You smile, because it's your job. Inside, you wonder if he remembers how many lashes he gave Tiro for spilling garum last week. Probably not. Gaius orders you to sit at the dining table, you, sitting, in the triclinium, with cushions and garlands and food that isn't scraped off someone else's plate. It feels illegal. The other slaves shuffle in, unsure how to react. Tiro's eyes dart around like he's about to be struck by a thunderbolt. Even Linus, the Greek grammar snob, is at a loss for words. Then Gaius claps and says, "Come now, laugh, drink, pretend to be one of us." So you do. You're handed a goblet of spiced wine and roasted chestnuts. You're invited to insult your master Harmel. Sly, of course. And, because it's expected, you do. Something mild about his paunch. Everyone laughs. You're a hit. You feel clever. Until his wife glares. Until the youngest son repeats your joke louder, and Gaius's smile flickers. The day wears on in a haze of meat, figs, and pretense. The slaves drink, some too much. A few start believing the illusion. Tiro puts on a senator's cloak and pretends to give orders to the cat. Everyone laughs again. But you don't drink. You know this game. You've seen this play before. Because you remember last year's Saturnalia, when one slave got too bold, joked about Gaius's mistress, drank from the wrong cup. He disappeared the next morning. No one asked where he went. So you sit, you smile, you eat slowly, you listen. Because today is not for celebration, it's for gathering information. And you gather plenty. You learn Gaius's cousin is in debt, that the senator visiting next week hates anchovies, that the mistress's pearls aren't real, and that she's furious about it. That the new steward, Claudius, is lazy and resented. That one of the guards secretly gambles with coin meant for feed. It's all useful. You file it away. You never know when something small might crack something big. That night, the illusion ends. The goblets are taken, the robes removed, the pileus tossed into a corner, and the beatings resume the next day, because Saturnalia, like everything else in Rome, is a show. But something else has changed. You can feel it. The slaves are talking more, whispering longer, looking up when they walk. That's dangerous and thrilling. Something is coming. A week later, you are summoned not by Gaius, but by a visitor. He's tall, with a scar running down his jaw, dressed plainly, smells of travel and horses. He introduces himself as Decimus, a traitor, though you know that's not the full truth. Traitors don't ask for specific slaves by name. He wants to speak to you privately. That never happens. In the storeroom, he studies you like a fellow soldier. "I've heard you're clever," he says. "Careful, that's rare." You don't answer. "Do you know what's happening outside these walls?" he asks. "Have you heard the rumors?" You nod slowly. "There are movements," he says, "in the hills, in the forests, along the roads, quiet ones, people who haven't forgotten what freedom feels like." Your heart pounds. You say nothing. "There will be a signal," he says. "When it comes, be ready." Then he leaves. Just like that. You return to your duties. Sweep, serve, bow. But now you sweep with purpose. You listen harder. You test door hinges. You count guard rotations. You watch the sky. Because now you know. You're not alone. You're part of something. And you begin to prepare. You don't remember what first woke you. Maybe it was the cold, the kind that crept through the floorboards and wrapped itself around your spine. Maybe it was the way the rats had gotten bold again, scratching at the corner of the shed like they were owed rent. Or maybe, and this seems more likely, it was the feeling that something had shifted. Not in the sky, not in the dirt, but in the air between people. Something unspoken had begun to ripple through the latifundium. You sit up slowly, careful not to jostle the scab on your ribs, a souvenir from last week's disagreement with a stone wheelbarrow. Around you, the others are already stirring. Tiro mutters in his sleep, a name you don't recognize. Across from him, the man everyone calls Ox, a Gallic brute with shoulders like barrels, is already awake, sharpening a stick with quiet menace. You don't ask what for, he never tells. Breakfast is the usual. Barley gruel with the consistency of sorrow. You eat quickly, not because it's delicious, but because it's warm. Warm is rare. Warm is currency. The overseer, Rufus, arrives late. This is unusual. Rufus is many things cruel, joyless, oddly obsessed with sandal polish, but he is never late. His red cloak flaps behind him like a war banner as he stumbles into the field, barking orders with half his usual venom. His lip is split, his left hand is bandaged. No one asks, no one needs to. Something happened last night, something violent. Word spreads quietly, like steam from a bathhouse. One of the slaves, a Thracian named Dacius, is gone, vanished. His bunk untouched, his tunic missing, and a set of footprints leading into the woods. He escaped, or tried to. You spend the morning pressing olives, but your mind isn't in it. It's on Dacius. He was careful, smart. He knew which guards drank too much when the moon was darkest and how to move without being seen. If anyone could make it, it was him. By noon, a rider arrives, a Roman soldier, helmet gleaming, cloak pristine. He speaks with Rufus for a long time. They point at maps. They shout. Then the soldier leaves, kicking dust as he goes. That afternoon, the punishment comes. 2 slaves, strangers from the vineyard, 2-3. South are chained and dragged into the courtyard. They didn't help Dacius escape. That much is clear. But Rufus is making a point, a lesson for the rest of you. The punishment is brutal, public, meant to settle something primal in Rufus's heart. When it's over, the men are left where they fell. No one moves to help. The silence afterward is not grief, it's calculation. Everyone is wondering, was it worth it? Would it be? That night, Tiro speaks. We have to do something. He says it softly, like it's a spell he's afraid will backfire. You don't answer. Not yet. You're still weighing things, the iron collar you once saw nailed to a runaway's throat, the crucifixions that line the Appian Way like macabre mile markers, the way hope can turn sour so quickly. But the silence is already broken, and once words begin, actions aren't far behind. The days grow hotter. The olives come in heavier. The presses groan under their own weight, but the field slaves move with new purpose. You start to notice the signals, a shoulder tap that lasts half a second too long, a dropped bucket in a specific corner, a cough at a precise moment. It's a language built out of silence. One night, Tiro shows you the map. He's drawn it on the back of a discarded ledger probably stolen from the overseer's office. It's crude, barely legible in the moonlight, but you understand the basics. The fields, the watch rotations, the weakest gate, the slope in the eastern wall where erosion has done most of the work for you. You're serious, you say. I was serious the day they put chains on my ankles, he replies. Escape plans are dangerous, not just because of failure, but because of hope. Hope makes you soft. Hope makes you hesitate. And hesitation, in a place like this, is fatal. Still, you agree, not because you believe it'll work, but because not trying feels like dying slowly, and you're tired of dying. Over the next week, the plan takes shape, carefully, quietly. Tools are stolen not enough to be noticed. Just a few nails here, a knife blade there. Rations are hidden beneath floorboards. One of the guards, young and sleepy-eyed, is discovered to be more bark than bite. He's marked. Not for violence, but for misdirection. Tiro calls it controlled chaos. You call it madness with structure. And all the while, you continue your work. You pick the olives, you press the oil, you clean the vats, you bow when spoken to, and avert your eyes when beaten. You act like nothing is coming. Until the storm. It's always a storm. Roman summers are dry, sure, but when the rain does come, It comes in torrents. Lightning splits the sky. Thunder rattles the earth. The guards retreat to shelter. The slaves are left in the fields, drenched and forgotten. It is, in short, the perfect moment. The escape happens fast. Too fast. Tiro cuts the gate chain with a rusted blade. Ox lifts the smallest slave, a boy no older than 10, onto his back. You slip through the gap, barefoot, heart hammering. The storm drowns out your footsteps. For 10 glorious minutes, you are free. Then the dog barks, and everything unravels. They catch 2 of you by the time you reach the tree line. You don't look back. You can't. To look back is to be caught too. You run. Branches slash your face. Mud sucks at your feet. The forest feels endless, alive, like it's watching. Eventually, you stop. You don't know where you are, but you're not in chains. You're not under Rufus's boot. You are alive. Somewhere behind you, someone screams. You don't go back. You walk for hours, days, maybe. You sleep in ditches, drink from streams, eat whatever grows low enough to reach. Your skin itches from insect bites. Your legs tremble with exhaustion. But still, you walk. Then, finally, a road. You follow it north, avoiding travelers. At night, you hear wolves. By day, carts roll past Roman merchants, some with their own slaves tied behind them like luggage. You hide in thickets, heart racing. You reach a village. Small, unremarkable. The kind of place the Empire barely remembers. You steal a cloak from a washing line. You trade your iron anklet broken during the flight to a peddler for stale bread and a jar of pickled fish. It's the best meal you've ever had. You don't give your name. You don't make eye contact. You pretend to be deaf, dumb, slow anything but memorable. And for a while, it works. You sleep in barns. You sweep floors in exchange for crusts. You stay invisible. But you are always watching. You learn that Rome's borders are far, yes, but not as far as you'd hoped. That even in the north, even in the quiet corners of the Republic, slave catchers operate like ghosts. That escape is not the end, it's the beginning of a new kind of fear. You meet others, runaways. One was a gladiator. One used to clean a senator's chamber pots. One, heartbreakingly, was a mother who doesn't know if her children survived. You don't speak much. There's nothing left to say. Until the night you hear a story. A whispered rumor passed along by firelight that somewhere in the mountains past the river there is a place where no Romans go. A camp, a village, maybe just a cave. But it is free. Truly free. They call it Libertas. The next morning, you start walking again. You don't know if it exists, but then again, you didn't know you could survive the fields, or the beatings, or the escape. You didn't know you could be more than a shadow, but now you do, and so you walk, because in Rome, the chains never rest, but neither do you. You learn quickly that in Rome, nothing is ever just what it seems. The bread isn't just bread, it's a social symbol. The sandals aren't just sandals, they're a subtle ranking system. And the bathhouse? Oh, the bathhouse isn't just a bathhouse. It's politics, theater, hygiene, espionage, and eroticism all rolled into one steaming, marble-slicked nightmare. After months on the latifundium, you are brought back to the city. Not because you earned it, not because someone missed you, but because Gaius has decided that his villa staff is looking unkempt. His words. And you, having endured blistered hands and the quiet horror of watching olive presses crush more than just fruit, are apparently what passes for fresh stock. Back to the villa you go, but you're not the same. You're leaner, harder, quieter. The kind of quiet that isn't from fear anymore, but calculation. You speak less, observe more. Your eyes linger a bit longer on exit routes, weapons hung for decoration, and the way slaves carry themselves when they're about to snap. And then, Gaius gives the order that seals your fate for the next several weeks. The bathhouse needs new staff, he says, sniffing at you like a wine he's not sure about. You'll assist at the thermi. Try not to embarrass me. You're not sure what that means yet, but you bow, you nod, and the next morning, you're marched across the forum to the grand public baths of Agrippa. They are colossal. Steam rises from columns like breath from a stone god. Marble glistens, water echoes. Statues of new demigods cast long shadows over mosaics, so intricate they'd make your eyes cross. It smells of lavender oil, sweat, urine, and ambition. You're issued a uniform strip of linen cloth that dignifies nothing, and handed a bronze bucket, a coarse sponge, and a brush. Your job? Scrub the floors, the benches, and the backs of sweaty senators who believe your purpose in life is to exfoliate their sacred posteriors. You start in the apoditerium, the changing room. Here, citizens disrobe and store their belongings with the help of young slave boys called capsari. These boys are sharp-eyed and quick-fingered. They remember who tips, who gropes, and who forgets their rings in their tunic folds. Theft is punishable by death, so they don't steal, but they remember everything. You meet one of them, Nico. He's maybe 12, dark-haired, wiry, with a permanent smirk. He's been here since he could walk. You're new, he says, squinting at you. You've got the look. What look? The look of someone who thinks this job might not be awful. Give it a day. He's right. By noon, you've seen more old, hairy Romans than you'd ever wish upon your worst enemy. You've scrubbed the tepidarium's benches so many times you start dreaming in circular motions. You've inhaled enough steam to become part human kettle. But worse than the work is the conversation. The baths are the heart of Roman gossip. Senators discuss bribes while being massaged with oil. Merchants arrange deals while being scraped clean with strigils. And the elite? They talk openly, assuming you're too dumb or too deaf to understand. You listen anyway. You learn that Gaius has debts, that he's making overtures toward a senator's widowed daughter, that a rival family might try to poison him again. You tuck this knowledge away like precious coin. In the caldarium, where the water is so hot it fogs your vision and scalds your shins, you witness things. Deals sealed with handshakes and foot rubs, whispers exchanged under the guise of small talk. Once, you see a slave girl slip something into a bath at her master's nod. The man in the tub falls unconscious 10 minutes later. Everyone pretends not to notice. You don't speak of it. But something else happens at the baths. Something you didn't expect. You begin to understand the Roman body. Not in a lewd way, though. Plenty of that is on display, but in a physiological, cultural, and philosophical way. Romans treat their bodies as both temples and weapons. They oil them, train them, display them. They flaunt scars like medals and call fat a moral failing. Bathhouses are less about cleanliness and more about asserting vitality, strength, dominance. You start to see which patrons are favored, which are feared, who wields power, and who pretends to. And then there's betrayal. One evening, just before dusk, a man you don't recognize enters the frigidarium. He's tall, cloaked, his face hidden. He orders all slaves out, except you. "I want this one to stay," he tells the steward. "I'll need help." You feel the tension immediately. He sits, undresses slowly, doesn't look at you. "You work for Gaius," he says finally. You nod. "I need you to deliver something for me. A scroll. No one must know." He hands it over, sealed with wax, no crest. You hesitate. Slaves don't get choices. But this smells dangerous. You take the scroll, hide it in your tunic. That night you lie awake. What's in it? A message? A hit order? A declaration of love or war? You consider opening it. You don't. Instead, you deliver it as instructed. To a small house in Trastevere. A woman answers, takes the scroll, closes the door. 3 days later, Gaius is summoned to the Senate under suspicion of conspiracy. He's furious. He blames everyone. Then, one by one, his household slaves are questioned, including you. You lie. You say you never saw the man, never touched a scroll. You scrub backs and floors, not secrets. They believe you, or they want to. Gaius is cleared, barely, but the suspicion lingers. You return to the baths. Everything continues as before. But now the steward watches you. Your name circulates among slaves. Not just as the quiet one, but as something else. A survivor. And for the first time, you feel the stirrings of real agency. Not freedom, not yet, but leverage. And in Rome, leverage is the one currency even slaves can spend if they're brave enough. The wind smelled different this morning, fresher, almost citrusy, like someone had wrung out the sky and hung it to dry. Or maybe your nose was finally clearing up after months in the olive press. Either way, something in the air told you that change was coming. And change in a slave's life was a bit like an unexpected lion in the Colosseum, exciting, terrifying, and almost certainly dangerous. You'd been reassigned again. Apparently, after your fainting episode, you still claim it was strategic, the overseer had deemed you unfit for field work. Too weak, he grunted, kicking dust at your feet. Let's find you something softer for your delicate constitution. Softer, of course, didn't mean easier. It meant different. You were sent to a workshop, fuller's shop to be exact. And if you're thinking, oh, how lovely, sewing tunics and spinning wool, allow us to introduce you to the glamorous world of ancient Roman laundry. The moment you entered, the stench hit you like a chariot at full speed. Ammonia. You coughed, blinked, gagged, took a step back, and were promptly shoved forward by a grinning man with a missing eyebrow and a nose like a bent spoon. Welcome to the Pisser's Palace, he said proudly. Name's Varro. You'll love it here. Varro explained that this was a Fulonica laundry operation run by slaves where they cleaned togas, tunics, and linens using, yes, fermented urine. Public urinals, basically large amphorae on street corners, were collected daily and delivered here in sloshing barrels. It was your job now to wade barefoot into tubs of garments soaked in this golden broth and stomp them clean like a human plunger. You paused. Wait, you mean I'm washing senator robes with pee? Varro clapped you on the back. Not just washing, my friend. You're sanctifying. We're the unseen priests of Roman hygiene. The first day nearly ended you. The smell was demonic. The texture esquishy and gritty defied logic. You slipped. You splashed. You emerged looking like you'd been hugged by a sewer. But you learned. You learned to breathe through your mouth and focus your mind elsewhere, your village, the clouds above the city, the patterns in marble floors. Anything but the reality of your squelching feet. By week 2, you were a pro. Stomp, stomp, swish, lift, ring, beat, dry. You worked alongside a ragtag crew of piss-paddle veterans, each with their own coping mechanisms. One hummed lullabies, one muttered curses in Punic. One recited love poetry to the garments, which was somehow the creepiest of them all. But the Fulonica was more than a pit of urinate, was a hub of gossip. Slaves here cleaned the clothes of the elite, and those clothes talked. Bloodstains, perfume traces, notes sewn into hems, missing ring-saw evidence of the secret lives of Rome's upper crust. You began piecing together stories, which magistrate was cheating on his wife, which priest wore silk under his robes, which senator had a recurring rash. You stored them away like pebbles in a pushuslis until, suddenly, not. Then one day, everything changed. Again. It started with a single customera woman draped in deep purple, followed by a procession of guards and servants. She carried herself like someone who never had to walk. You and the others froze mid-plunge. Even Varro stopped mid-pea-barrel haul. Domina Cornelia, he whispered, wife of senator. Brutus Minor. She approached the workbench with the disdain of someone inspecting spoiled oysters. Her eyes scanned the room, lingering on you for a second too long. Then she pointed at a bundle. This one. Varro stepped forward. My lady, that slave is. I said this one, she snapped. That's how you got selected for temporary reassignment to her estate. Just like that. Plucked from the pit like a cabbage and scrubbed clean for delivery. Varro offered you a handshake as you left. Try not to offend anyone, or fall in love. That house eats both. The villa of Domina Cornelia was nothing like Gaius's place. It was larger, grand, but cold. The kind of house that felt like a museum exhibit to itself. Statues everywhere, mostly of her husband, who seemed to only have two facial expressions, grim and grimmer. The floors were marble. The walls painted in scenes of victory, conquest, and grapes. Your role? Not clear. At first, you were assigned to help in the triclinium, the dining room. You fetched grapes. You wiped wine off sandals. You held a silver tray with exactly 1 olive on it for 3 hours straight. But then came the whispers. Cornelia was not like other Roman matrons. She was interested in poetry, politics, philosophy, and, according to the kitchen gossip, possibly in you. It started innocently enough. She asked your name. You lied. She asked where you were from. You lied again. She asked if you could read. You hesitated. She smiled. Next thing you knew, you were summoned nightly not to her chamber, thank Jupiter, but to her study. There, she had you read scrolls aloud, mostly Plato, sometimes Ovid. Once, a scandalous bit of Sappho that made her laugh and dismiss the guards. You felt like a Patan entertaining parrot trained to speak in verse, but you played along. And as you read, you learned. Cornelia was lonely. Her husband was in the Senate, then out of town, then back, always grumbling about barbarians or taxes or someone insulting his nose. She had power, yes, but it was the kind built on fragile foundations. She needed someone who listened. You needed someone who didn't dunk you in urine. An understanding, of sorts, was born. But in Rome, understandings are dangerous. One night, she didn't summon you. You assumed she was ill, or bored, or tired of your rustic accent mangling Homer. Then, the next day, the steward arrived. You've been reassigned, he said, not unkindly, to the baths. Public or private? Public. The Forum Baths. You sighed. This was not an upgrade. The Forum Baths were not relaxing. They were chaos in marble. A never-ending stream of wealthy patrons, half-naked senators, gossiping matrons, and sweaty gladiators arguing over foot fungus remedies. Your job, mixed. Some days, you hauled wood to keep the furnaces going. Other days, you massaged olive oil into oily limbs. Occasionally, you were on towel duty dodging wet togas and wet hands. And once, tragically, you had to unclog the latrine drain. You still wake up screaming from that one. But the baths were also a hub of secrets. People talk when they're hot and wet and being scrubbed by someone they consider furniture. You learned more in 3 weeks there than in your entire first year. Senator Rufinus was plotting to buy off a judge. A general had an illegitimate son posing as his valet. A priestess from the Temple of Vesta was very interested in gladiators and not at all interested in vows of chastity. You listened. You remembered. And then came the day that changed your life. Again. You were oiling the shoulders of a rotund merchantone of those men who smelled like wine even before noon when he waved dismissively at a conversation happening nearby. Foolish slaves, he said, plotting to escape. Again, don't they know they'll end up nailed to a post? Your ears perked up. Escape. The merchant continued, chewing grapes with wet smacks. Some fool named Marcus is planning a revolt in the Suburra. Thinks he can gather 100 men. Idiot. Marcus. You knew that name. Publius had spoken of him long ago in the olive fields. A friend, a dreamer, a leader. You slipped away that night, feigning illness. Found a contact, traded gossip for directions, risked everything, and found Marcus. Not in the Subura, in the catacombs. He was older now, harder, but the fire was still there. "We've got 30, he whispered. "Maybe 40, if we're lucky." "And the plan?" you asked. "Chaos," he said. "During Saturnalia, when the masters are drunk and the guards are lazy." You agreed. Not out of hope, but out of duty. To Publius, to every broken body you'd seen buried beneath olives or drowned in laundry vats or forgotten in steam rooms. You trained in secret, learned which streets were least patrolled, which gates were rusting, who could be bribed, who could be trusted. And when Saturnalia came, with its masks and laughter and drunk senators wearing slave clothes for a laugh, you were ready. You'd never felt freer than in that moment running through Roman streets dressed as your master, laughing, shouting, hiding daggers in fruit baskets. And then, the horns. The guard response was brutal, predictable, merciless. You ran, fought, bled. Watched Marcus fall beside the temple of Castor and Pollux. You made it to the city wall, and paused. Beyond Itries, hills, a river, the unknown. Behind you Rome, fire, screams, the clang of justice. You turned, and walked back, not to surrender, but because the revolution had only just begun. Because someone had to survive to tell the stories. Because Rome needed more than escape. It needed witnesses. The day after the failed Saturnalia revolt, Rome seemed quieter. Not calm. Rome was never truly calm, but eerily subdued, like a lion licking its wounds after a brawl. The streets buzzed not with revelry, but with whispers. Rumors passed faster than chariots. Who had escaped? Who had died? Who had betrayed whom? You were alive, bruised, limping, half-starved, but alive. Somehow, in the chaos, you slipped back into anonymity. Maybe it was your missing tunic sleeve, or the wine stain that made you look more like a hungover reveler than a rebel. Maybe Jupiter smiled on you. More likely, no one bothered to suspect a slave with tired eyes and a bandaged leg. You hid in plain sight back at the baths. The staff was smaller now. Some had vanished during the uprising, some vanished after it. No one asked questions. The furnace still burned. The floors still needed scrubbing. The elite still wanted their massage oils at just the right temperature. Rome, after all, wasn't built on justice. It was built on routine. Your return surprised no one. In the eyes of the bathhouse overseer, you were just another silent tool. You were handed a towel. You nodded, and the world kept turning. But things weren't the same. You were different, and the city felt like it knew. Every alley, every forum, every temple held echoes. You began to see the city not as your prison, but as a stage. A stage where everyone played roles masters, merchants, beggars, priests, and most were just better-fed versions of you. Some were even worse off. At night, you returned to your sleeping spot behind the water cistern, wrapped in a discarded cloak that smelled faintly of lavender and sweat. You listened, watched, took mental notes. You had no grand plan, but you had purpose. You weren't the same slave who had been dragged into a market square a year ago. You weren't even the same slave who had buried a friend in an olive grove. You had seen what freedom tasted like: metallic, bitter, fleeting, and you weren't done fighting for it. Enter the strange man in the green tunic. You first saw him in the tepidariumph, the warm room of the bath sitting alone, fully clothed, which was odd enough. Romans loved their nudity in public spaces. He wasn't there to bathe, he was there to watch. When your eyes met, he nodded. 2 days later, he approached you by the furnace room. "You're the one who returned," he said in Greek. You said nothing. He chuckled. "Smart. Rome has a long memory, but short attention." He tossed you a scroll, tied with a piece of linen. "Read this, or find someone who can." Then he vanished. That night, you unfurled the scroll by candlelight. It wasn't poetry, it was a list. Names, places, times, meetings. It was a map not of roads, but of people, connections, networks, underground. It was the slave resistance. You didn't sleep. By week's end, you'd found the first name on the list, Myrina, a cook in the household of a provincial governor. She greeted you at the back door with a ladle and a glare. "You're late," she muttered, handing you a sack of flour. "Come, we're feeding 20 tonight, maybe 30. You blended into her kitchen like smoke, no questions, no eye contact, just movement. As night fell and the final dishes were cleared, Myrina led you through a hidden door behind the wine rack. You descended into a passage lit by oil lamps and thick with the scent of rosemary and revolution. You counted 10 others. Men, women, young, old, all slaves, all listening. The leader was a Nubian named Cassius. His voice was calm, deep, and dangerous. "We don't want martyrdom," he said. "We want leverage." The new resistance wasn't trying to burn Rome. They were infiltrating it. Educated scribes in senatorial homes, couriers in the imperial post, accountants who could forge records, cooks who knew which wine to lace with poppy seeds, gladiators who could disarm a guard in silence. Slaves who weren't just surviving anymore, but subverting. You were no longer just a body. You were an agent. Your assignments began small. Swapping scrolls. Passing messages hidden inside loaves of bread. Delivering coded phrases to random vendors. But with each task, you gained trust, confidence, clarity. You learned to navigate Rome's dual realities, the one above, gilded and loud, and the one below, whispered and precise. You posed as a delivery boy for a spice merchant, as a candle maker's assistant, as a stable boy for a drunk senator who couldn't tell one slave from another. But your biggest job came during the Ludi Romanith Games. For 8 days, the city descended into madness. Chariot races, animal hunts, public executions dressed up as entertainment. You were assigned to the Colosseum, specifically the kitchens beneath it. You thought your job was to poison the pork. It wasn't. Let's rewind. The Colosseum was a machine. Beneath its marble grandeur was a labyrinth of pulleys, cages, cells, and ramps. Slaves worked every level of it, from dressing the condemned to hauling lions in crates. You were stationed near the animal pens. Not glamorous. Your cover, feeding the beasts. Your real task, mapping the tunnels. The resistance planned something bold, not an escape, not an uprising, an exposure. They wanted the crowd thousands of citizens to see what Rome tried to hide, the guts beneath the glamour, the gears in the machine. Your job, open the wrong gate at the right time. The plan was simple. At midday, as the crowd roared for more blood, you would release a gate meant for a tiger. But instead of leading into the arena, it would open into the imperial box. The tiger would not understand social class. The chaos would be filmed in memory, etched into rumor, spread like fire. The emperor himself would be exposed, not killed, just terrified, enough to spark whispers. Enough to make Rome blink. You almost did it. You got to the gate. You unlocked the latch. And then a voice. Stop. It was Varro. Eyebrowless, bathhouse Varro. Holding a gladius. "I figured you'd end up somewhere interesting," he said. You blinked. "Your resistance?" He grinned. "Nah, just a man who owes a favor to someone who said you'd do something stupid." You stared at him. "Let the beast loose and you die in the stampede," he said. "Close the gate and maybe we both walk out." You looked at the tiger pacing, snarling, ready. You looked at Rome cheering, blind, drunk, on spectacle. You closed the gate and whispered, "Not today." Varro got you out, through a tunnel, past a bribe-happy guard, into the chaos of the city. He didn't say much. Just, "You've got more to do. Don't waste it on a stunt." You agreed. Reluctantly, because resistance wasn't a single act. It was endurance. It was information. It was outliving them. Weeks passed. You returned to laundry, to kitchens, to silence. But the fire never dimmed. You began teaching others, quietly, how to read, how to lie convincingly, how to smile while slipping poison into ink bottles. You didn't need Rome to burn. You needed Rome to rot from the inside. And so it began, one whisper at a time. The sun sets differently when you're free. Not better, not brighter, just differently. Like the world is exhaling after centuries of holding its breath. You don't feel free yet, of course, not truly, but the chains are off. The name they branded into you, Felix, Cassius, or whatever cruel little joke they chose, no longer your only name. You whisper your real one to yourself at night, afraid it might float away if you say it too loud. It's the last piece of you they didn't manage to own. The villa is behind you, so is the field, so is Rufus, so is Publius, buried under the olive trees. You still see his face sometimes in the firelight, still remember how he laughed about figs. You never liked figs much. Now you can't look at one without wanting to cry. It's been weeks since you escaped. You don't count days anymore. The calendar was always for them. You measure time in sunrises and bruises, in how often the guards pass, how long until you dare to move again, how many footsteps between this rock and the goat path that might lead to the coast. If this is freedom, it tastes like fear and dry bread, but it is freedom nonetheless. You thought the hard part was running. It wasn't. The hard part is surviving once you're gone. Freedom doesn't come with food, or shelter, or protection. It comes with suspicion, with whispers, with bounty notices nailed to tavern doors. You passed one yesterday. The sketch was bad, but the chain mark on the neck was unmistakable. Yours. Reward, 50 denarii for return to the villa of Gaius Marius. It didn't even mention your name. Because to them, you never had one. You keep moving. You head south, toward the sea, toward the stories. There are always stories of places where ex-slaves live together in the hills, where they grow their own food and take Roman names just to mock them. Of temples that offer sanctuary if you kneel long enough. Of ships that sail to Egypt, where the laws are different and coin talks louder than blood. You don't know if any of them are real. You're not sure it matters. You just need one of them to be true. You pass a burned vill. Age. No survivors. Just smoke and goats chewing on someone's laundry. You find a stream and drink until your belly aches. You steal a cloak from a washing line and wear it inside out, so no one sees the insignia. At night, you sleep under thorn bushes. You wake up covered in ants. You laugh. It's a real laugh. It sounds cracked and broken, but it's yours. You meet others, not many. A blind man with burn scars on his hands, who used to be a cook in a Roman camp and accidentally poisoned a centurion. A girl of 12 who doesn't speak but draws in the dirt. A former gladiator missing half his jaw, who grunts his stories in gestures and carries 3 knives in his boot. None of them stay long. Freedom makes people restless. Eventually, you make it to the coast, and for the first time in your life, you see the sea not as something that brings Romans but something that might take you away from them. You find work in a fishing village. They don't ask many questions. You haul nets, gut fish, clean the stalls, keep your head down. A woman named Aelia gives you bread when she thinks no one is looking. Her son reminds you of your brother, or maybe your son. You can't remember which. You never tell them where you're from. You never tell them your name. They start calling you Maresia. You don't correct them. It's better than Felix. And for a time, it's enough. Then one morning, a ship docks with a red sail, and just like that, your past catches up. Roman soldiers don't need to announce themselves. Their presence announces them, The way they walk, the way people flinch, the way they look at you like they already know what you've done. You don't run, not immediately, because you've run enough. But you prepare. You hide the knives under the fish crates. You watch the soldiers eat. You count how many there are. 6. One is limping. One keeps scratching his shoulder. One looks too young to shave. That night, you disappear again. You leave behind the cloak, the name, the half-finished carving you made for Alia's son. You cry for the first time in months. Not for yourself, for the life that almost was. The hills are colder this time of year. You sleep under a broken archway that was once part of a temple to Minerva, the goddess of wisdom. You hope she'll forgive the irony. You meet others again. Not slaves, not soldiers, something in between. Smugglers, traders, priests with no gods. They speak in riddles and carry too many knives. One of them offers you a place among them. We steal from the ones who stole first, he says. Rome took everything. We take it back. You say yes, not because you want revenge, but because it's something to do. You learn to climb walls, to forge seals, to make wax molds of villa keys. You learn how to read a scroll upside down. You learn that senators keep secrets in wine jars, and that temple vaults are heavier on festival days. You learn how to make yourself disappear. You become a ghost in Rome's system. A shadow that walks among statues and never leaves footprints. Sometimes you see someone from the old life. A steward from Gaius's estate. A guard from the latifundium. Once, you swear you see Tiro, but he vanishes in the crowd before you can be sure. You wonder what became of him. You wonder if he still sharpens nails into combs. You don't stop moving. Not anymore. Freedom is a verb now. It's not something you have. It's something you do. Every day, in every stolen moment, in every lie that keeps you breathing. And then, one night, it all comes full circle. You're in a villa. It's dark. The master is gone. The guards are drunk. You slip through the halls like a breeze. And you find the atrium. And you see the statue. Jupiter, again. Same eyes. Same judgment. You realize this isn't just any villa. This is Gaius's. The same Gaius, the same mosaics, the same damn statue. You freeze. Not in fear, in disbelief. It's smaller than you remember. Everything is. The rooms, the couches, the voices. You hear the mistress solder now. Shrillers somehow complain about figs. You hear the children argue. You see a slave move past the door. A girl, barely 10. She's carrying a tray with fruit. You leave. You don't take anything. You don't kill anyone. You just walk out. Because some ghosts don't need to haunt the past. They just need to see it one last time to know they're free. You return to the hills. You keep walking. You change your name again, just for fun. This time it's Vox. Voice, because you have one now. You use it to tell stories, around fires, in taverns, to runaway boys and tired women and old men with scars. You tell them what Rome was, what it did, what it still does. They don't believe you at first, but they listen, and that's enough. Years pass. You don't count them. You become someone else again. A merchant, a healer, a scribe, a liar, a man with no chains. And one day, you wake up and realize something strange. You're not waiting anymore. Not for a better life. Not for justice. Not for Rome to collapse. You're just living. And that, in the end, is the final rebellion. Because they told you you were nothing. And here you are, still